kissing me good time. And all I wanna do is make it better. Pretty little baby, you have kissing me good time. And all I wanna do is make it better. I can never tell you that I did love you now. And the love that I can convey.
Boom! Go Getters Podcast. Today we're sitting down with Dr. Will Ramey. Dr. Will Ramey is a U.S. Army veteran and founder of the Shared Leadership LLC, and the host of the Leadership Decoded Podcast. Will, welcome to the show, man. We're excited to have you. We've been chopping it up for a little while here, getting into all the nitty gritty behind the scenes here before the pod. But we're very welcome to have you here, man.
Yeah,
How you
thank
doing?
you so much. I'm doing phenomenal. I appreciate you guys coming out. Gracious host right here. Like I said, it's almost like we wanted to hit record from the time I walked
Yeah.
in.
Oh,
The
yeah.
conversation has just been so natural and fulfilling for me so far. So I can't wait to see where this goes.
Yeah, so the reason that we wanted to have you on the show is because you talk about leadership. You know, that's the number one thing that you really emphasize. And I know for Kevin and especially for myself, leadership is really important. I think it's important to have good leaders, and I know that I'm trying to curate better leadership habits within myself as well. So I think it's going to be really interesting talking to you and getting to delve into your brain a little bit to try to maybe make some breakthroughs and develop ourselves a little bit further as leaders today. So it's really cool what you do too and talk about leadership. And you have some really interesting history as a leader in the military and stuff like that as well. So I'm excited for this episode, man. It's going to be really cool.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So what's your background with leadership? Like, you were in the military and how'd you get into all this?
Yeah, I have been in leadership positions my entire professional career. So, and I say that, and it's not an exaggeration. When I was 17, I enlisted in the Army National Guard, grew up in Northeast Ohio. So my first time, I'm a senior in high school, and then once a month I would go to our battle assemblies. And I was put in about 6 months in, I was put into a team leader position. So it was me and two other soldiers, and I was responsible for making sure they understood orders, making sure they understood what's going on, making sure that we're equipped, we're ready, we're where we need to be, we're ready to go. So that was my first, semi-adult, 17-year-old, you don't think as yourself as an adult, but that was my first, semi-adult step into leadership. And then from there, it just took off. I was fortunate enough to get my commission and become a lieutenant in the Army. And I got out as a captain. In my time in uniform, I was a platoon leader. I was a maintenance recovery officer in charge. I was a team leader. I was an operations officer that had a team of people planning. So I got to lead teams. My last assignment was I was a space operations officer, OIC, for a crew.
Yes, we have to get into this later on in the podcast episode because he and I were very curious about that.
Okay. So I'll save that a little bit, but that was probably one of the best jobs that I had. Right.
Yeah.
So spending time in uniform, I got to learn how to put people first. I got to learn how to influence, how to communicate, how to care for, how to make decisions, how to delegate, how to empower people. So all of these abilities that you have as a person is what we kind of boxed into this thing that we call leadership.
Yeah.
Spent some time when I left the Army as a team leader for Target Corporation. I worked in their distribution center. So outside of uniform, I got to lead teams. And then working as a Department of Army civilian, I got to lead teams. And now I get to lead myself as a business owner, right? So you take all this knowledge and experience and you want to pay it forward. So my journey into leadership, when I look back on it, kind of I was talking to somebody a few months ago. It kind of scared me a little bit. I said, "Geez, I don't have a skill. Right? I'm not an engineer. I'm not an IT specialist. I don't have a certification anywhere because I've led teams. I've led space operations teams. I'm not a satellite communication operation person or an IT person. I've led maintenance teams. I'm not a mechanic. I'm not a welder. I've led supply chain teams. I'm not a material equipment handler. So I had to learn the very much about the people side of leadership because I couldn't rely on subject matter expertise. I couldn't rely on authority. I couldn't rely on technical competency. But think about what it is that you want from a leader. What is it that you want from a person who is in, quote unquote, in charge of you in an organization? You want cared for. You want communicated with. You want to be heard. You want someone who's interested in your development. So for me, technical competency, it needs to be there. So you're just enough to where you can understand and learn things, but it doesn't need to be in the forefront to lead people. it's about learning how to lead people, learning how to connect, and all those different things.
Yeah. We talked about that a few times in the sense, and I'll never forget the actual like percentages of this. You and I were just talking about this recently, but there is a theory about that in any position of like being a owner of a business, an entrepreneur, a CEO, and you lead people, I believe it is something along the lines of like 20% of the job description you should be able to accomplish by yourself, I guess you could say, before you can go ahead and like lead somebody in that field. For example, if it was like editing, if I have a team of editors that edit YouTube videos for my YouTube channel, I should know my 20% so that I can communicate effectively with those people. I don't remember who came up with that idea, but I heard that a long time ago, and he and I talk about that pretty frequently.
It's like the Pareto principle. That's what it's called,
Yeah,
right?
the 80-20, right? And it's the same thing applied as, 80% of your problems are 20% of your people, or 80% of your problem is you can narrow it down to that niche, right? So that principle applied in this aspect, like you're talking about, Kevin, is, geez, I need to know just enough to be able to communicate effectively, is what I heard you say, right? So I need to know just enough to communicate effectively. I need to know just enough to ask good questions, but I don't want to know so much where I'm just telling you what to do and how to do it which then kind of chokes out that creative space. It chokes out that space for you to learn and explore something new, or you to teach me something new about whatever operation or process or, thing that we're in.
It's kind of like podcasting. Like initially you wanted to get on and talk about things and express yourself, but then you got to learn about XLR cables and all these different MP4 files and how to edit and all this other stuff. So you have to know
that's the tip of the iceberg.
Your fair share, right? So do you think that leaders are born, or can you craft yourself into being really an effective leader?
Oh man, that is the $1 million question. And I'll tell you, there are academics and researchers out there who are still debating this topic today.
Really?
100%, right? So we think about, and it really to me, it comes down into, when you think about leadership, what do you think about? Do you think about a person that has traits? Do you think about a process of exchange and influence? So for me, I think that you can have your foot in both camps. I think certain people that have certain abilities, humility, the ability to admit mistakes or admit when something's wrong, or to be able to say, I don't know, and be comfortable with that. A person that has empathy, a person that has adaptability and resilience, that's got communication skills. Those are abilities that you need. So I think those are, some people have an innate ability to adapt to those better and have a certain level of strength when it comes to those certain abilities, and others don't. But you can learn and you can practice. And that's what I say time over time is, you got to practice leadership. You have to practice leading. So if you put yourself in the category of, well, these are abilities, and abilities can be grown and strengthened, then everyone has a capacity to lead some way, shape, or form. Some are better than others. And then the other thing I want to touch on is, you can have those innate abilities, charisma, enthusiasm, intrinsic motivation, and nobody's following you. Because you also, like in the wrong context, it can go south quick, right? If you have all of those, abilities of being a good communicator and knowing how to tap into and connect with people, but you're manipulative or you're narcissistic, well, you can still find yourself leading and influencing people, but for all the wrong reasons, right? So think about it. So it's like this odd. That's why I said it's very complex, and people are still, today researching and discovering new things about how to lead, how to connect, under what context, under what situation, what combination of personality traits, what combination of abilities kind of bring together so that people can be good leaders. Leadership can flow, and followership can flow back and forth, right? So that you can have a positive work environment. You can have a high-performing team. You can achieve the results you want.
That's interesting, because it seems like, there are some people who are dedicated to trying to understand leadership from a psychological perspective. Like, what makes somebody a leader, and how could I isolate this to better understand, like, what this phenomenon is? Because there are such things as leaders, but without good intentions. Like, those people can end up being, like, leaders of some, negative militia of some sort, or
Sure.
they could be cult leaders or something like that.
We
where,
even find that in regular corporate settings
oh yeah,
where you've got people who have toxic leadership traits,
yeah,
but they get results. Right? So think about that for a minute. Like if you're working in finance or you're working in portfolio management and you're getting great results and you're getting people that are investing in your portfolio and getting good money, but you're kicking the crap out of your team in the process. But you're very good at covering that up. I take credit for my people's work. I don't let my team in the room when I'm talking to my bosses. My bosses may never see my negative behavior. All they see is that bottom line result.
Yeah.
So man, that person must be doing well. They must be a good leader. So they're getting results. They're effective in the short run, but they're burning their team, in the long run and day to day. So they get in these positions with those toxic toxic behaviors, and may not ever be discovered or uncovered.
What do you think about the approach of a slap in the face or slap in the face or a pat on the back? How do you perceive that as a person who is an expert on leadership, like a slap in the face or a pat on the back?
Yeah, but let me help
you want me to elaborate a little bit? So
so
a way of motivating a person can be different depending on like their like based on how they want to be motivated, I guess. Like what type of personality that they have. Like, for example, like some people might be more motivated by encouragement or praise or the pat on the back, metaphorically. Or some people might be, yo, dude, you're messing up. Like, let's go. You're causing the whole team a problem here. Like, they might want that more assertive and aggressive type of motivation. Yeah. So how do you approach something like that?
Yeah. So it's situational dependent, and I've seen both work with the same person or the same duo under different circumstances. So if you have somebody who is, brand new to a job, brand new to a position, who made a mistake, I'm not going to give them a slap in the face if that's my go-to tool. I'm going to give them a pat on the back and try to encourage them to, hey, what happened? What went wrong? What could you learn? What could you do different next time? Did you think about this? Did you try that? So I'm going to try to coach them back on track, right? Compared to somebody who is well-seasoned, who understands their role and their function very well, but they're just fighting against the grain. And I just don't want to do things this way. I have a certain way of doing it. I don't want to change. And you can tell they're starting to poison the water. Even a slap in the face, to take that metaphor, differently, to me, that's very much more of a assertive, direct conversation, to get into direct, honest feedback. This is what I have observed. This is what I see as an issue. This is what right looks like. I need to understand why you're not doing this. We've been trained. We've talked about it before. Help me understand what's going on. Give them space to answer, and then try to get them to see what they need to do differently. But then you got to leave them with, hey, if you don't make the change, here's the consequences.
Gotcha.
This is going to further deteriorate. So in my mind, when I'm in a leadership position, the encouragement, the coaching, the uplifting goes a lot longer. But there's also a time and place for the assertive, brief, direct, honest communication, because you should never let that poor performance linger or go on longer than it needs to be to get back on track.
Do you think it's true that in order to be a good leader, you must first learn to be a good follower?
I think so too, right? Because there's two sides to that equation, 100%, right? So you have to understand, I was just doing some prep work today for some social media posts and some potential future episodes of the podcast, and I wanted to understand, so I threw in Google, like, hey, what is it the team members want from a leader? You've got to understand perspective of both sides, right? Because it's one thing to be able to stand up and say, I'm in charge and I'm a leader and this is where we're going to go, follow me, and just expect people to follow you. If you haven't experienced being led, how do you know what right looks like? Or how do you know what works for you or what might work for somebody else? So there's absolutely some benefit to being a follower. I think it's Al Bandura, social learning theory. You learn from watching people. Right, is one of the theories out there. So if I'm a follower, I want to learn, why did that person say this way, or why did the person in charge do this a certain way? I want to understand that. Yeah, because I know how it affected me, but I may not know why they did it that way. So leadership and followership, is always a cycle. It's an ebb and flow of being able to do
Interesting.
that. And when you peel that back, to me, it's about influence. If I'm a leader, I'm trying to influence a group towards a common goal or objective.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a follower, I'm being influenced towards a common goal or objective.
Yeah.
And you get influenced differently than you get influenced differently than I get influenced. So you get into, this is the complications of leading people.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be able to kind of tailor that message so that person on the receiving end receives it, understands why, and is bought into and committed to going forth and doing great things.
Yeah.
Why do you think that followership isn't something that's advocated? Like, it's common in social media and for our mentors to tell us to be better leaders, right? But why isn't it told to us to be better followers?
Yeah. My personal opinion is that leadership is glorified. Right? Think about that. If I told you to close your eyes and picture a leader, you're probably picturing a person, I'll go out on a limb, most likely male, got a power stance going on, someone who's achieved very great things in business or in life or in the military. But peel that back and step back and say, well, did they do that all on their own? Did they have a team of people supporting them? All right. If you have a team of people supporting you, you've got to understand what is making people want to follow you. So to understand followership, you've got to understand like leader and team member exchange. So put yourself in their shoes. If you want to be a great leader, gain perspective. The best way to gain perspective is to learn how to follow, experience following, so that you can take what you learn and put that into practice, and it just continues to cycle.
What was that experience phase of you learning how to follow, like being that, I believe you said it was your senior year of high school, being 17, you were kind of thrusted into a more leadership type position. How did that earlier phase of, I guess you could say high school or even your childhood, following or taking orders, how did that work for you?
Yeah, it was an interesting experience, man. So I played sports growing up. I've always been a member of a team. I played instruments in band. I've been a member of a band. Like those early experiences from like 7 till 17, 18 when I graduated high school was spent on a team. You didn't always have the ball in your hand. You didn't always have a lead solo or whatever it may be. So you had to be in a supporting role so that the band could make the best sound possible, or so that the team could win as a team. We don't keep individual win and loss columns when we play sports on a team. You got one win, one loss, right? It's the team's loss. So learning how to, when the time is right, pick people up, and when the time is right, step back, be in support, let somebody else shine, really helped me understand how to work together with different types of people from different walks of life. I say 17, I was National Guard. So 1 week in a month I was doing that. And then I took a giant step back when I got on a plane to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and got off the bus at basic training when everybody is in
Ground
follower
level,
mode at ground level, right? So you put yourself the first time away from home, first plane ride away from home, and I've got a duffel bag on my front and a duffel bag on my back, and the drill sergeants are spinning us around, and we're just twirling, and we're dumping everything out, and here's like 500 young men and young women, freshly shaved, haircuts. I could probably go back today and tell you what brick I was looking at on the wall, on the opposite side of the courtyard.
That's crazy.
But the idea then was, before you lead, you got to learn how to follow. You got to learn your craft. You got to master competency, and we're going to teach you leadership behaviors. We're going to teach you leadership values. And if anybody in that platoon, that training company, a platoon we were in, if anybody started to show ego or edge up or try to show somebody else up, immediately it was met with, that's your battle buddy, that's your person to your right, to your left, you're in this together. It was all about camaraderie and support and respect for each other. And then if you happen to be titled lead for the day or squad leader for that day, just remember next week you're going to be right back down as a team player. So it was always like this system of checks and balances. So I got to learn, at that young age what it meant to work together to create something better than you. And to do that, you got to lead, you got to follow, and you got to know when to do both.
Yeah.
How do you typically advise people who find themselves in leadership situations to manage their ego? Because I would imagine oftentimes when somebody's in a leadership position, they can see themselves as like above their employees or above the people that they're leading. So how do you typically go about addressing that to kind of make it like they're their battle buddies or they're equal and they have, I don't know, how do you go about situating something like that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that come to mind. One is something that my dad always told us growing up. Is there's always somebody bigger and badder out there than you. No matter how big and bad you think you are, somebody out there is working harder, is bigger and badder than you. Just know that. So when you know that, it's like, well, that it kind of incentivizes you to want to continue to work more, but it keeps you in check. The other phrase I just came across the other day was, nobody's better than you, and you're not better than anybody else. I might have flipped them, but you get the point. Nobody's better than you, and you're not better than anybody else. So when I see leaders that get into this struggle, I had one time when I was working in for a retailer in their supply chain distribution center. I had a brand new leader. It was his first job out of college, and he was a group leader. He was in charge of a team at a warehouse. And I had a couple of his team members come up, and we're starting to, hey, can you help me out? This person is egotistical. They're hard to talk to. They talk down to us. Can you help them out? I said, sure, no problem. So I spent some time with them and just, hey, can I pop over to your startup? I want to, just check in, see how things are going. Hey, can I take you on a walk with you a little bit, talk with you? So I kind of just, took him under my wing. And what I found out was he was very much trying to be, I'm the leader, do what I say, do as I say, not taking into consideration. Now, these team members have been there for like 20 years, 25 years, some of them. And he's been there for, I don't know, about 30 days. So I just asked him, I said, hey, when you're doing your startup, right? I said, do you ever have any problem with people pushing back on you or making suggestions on how to do things differently? He goes, yeah, all the time. I said, how do you handle that? He goes, well, I just tell them I'm the group leader. Do what I say. There's no room for question. We got to get after this. Let's go. Right? He was very much wanting to get results. So he used his position to try to leverage that. I said, yeah. I said, think about it for a second. I said, when you're doing your startup, I said, where do you stand? He goes, I stand here. I said, where's your team stand? He goes, well, they stand in front of me. I said, do you need to tell them anything else about who the assigned group leader is? I said, they already know. You don't need to tell them directly. I said, do you ever think about how long have you been here? I've been here about a month. I said, you know how long some of them have been here? I said, about 20 years. I said, do you think they know a thing or two about moving freight effectively through a distribution center? Oh, yeah. You ever think to ask them their opinion? Do you ever think that their opinion, their information they can share with you will help you learn this operation better and help you learn and grow? So it was like this idea of when people start looking at position and they start leveraging positional authority, then you start getting into some things that get very, very dangerous. Now I'm leading by title. Now I'm leading by, I have the authority to reward you. I have the authority to discipline you. And there are so many other sources of power out there at work, to help leverage. So it really is this idea of when you work on a team and everyone has their individual expertise, who is the person that has the most power? Some people think, well, it's me. I have a title, or my box is here on an organizational chart and you're down here. And I argue the person that's pulling the data, if you have a data analyst, the person that's making the sale, that's been out in the field, the person that's doing the work has more information, has probably built better relationships, and that can really help you. So the idea of leave your ego at the door, embrace humility, ask questions more so than give direction, show your team that you're there to support, you're there to try to get them the resources they need, remove the roadblocks that they need, give them meaningful work, and then step back and give them the space to operate, which takes trust and letting go. That's when you'll see your team really start to perform, and that support goes back and forth.
With that specific case with this fellow, what do you think his intention was?
I think what it was, in my opinion, he was afraid of showing his ignorance. He was afraid of showing what he didn't know. And so, well, I'm the leader. I have to know everything. I'm the leader. I have to be in charge. I'm the leader. I have to show that I'm the leader. Yeah. And really, you're the leader, and you're new here. Trust me, they know you're new here. You don't have to show any of that. What's a better way of learning? Pretending to know something and then trying to figure it out on your own, or going up to an experienced person and asking them a question and thanking them for helping you and thanking them for their input, right?
Yeah. That's interesting. I found myself in a leadership position. I was in a emotional support classroom with middle school kids.
Okay.
And, they all had their own thing, but I had to, give orders and have them do their homework, and I had to, put them in line and take them from class to class. And it was difficult for me because there was a lot of things that I really wasn't accustomed to. And it was interesting trying to navigate the dynamics of, being the person in charge and then them constantly like testing that and then, doing crazy stuff. And I didn't really know how to balance being the disciplinarian and then also having empathy. So it was a very difficult thing for me to try and work out in my mind.
Yeah. So there's that line. I catch that all the time of people thinking, oh, if I need to be empathetic or I need to lead with humility, then I'm not going to be able to deliver a difficult message or hold somebody accountable. I say quite the opposite. If you put that work in up front, then you can still be assertive and in plain speak the message you need to deliver. But because you've done the work on the left side, people will know when it comes time for you to kind of set that boundary back in place. Like people will push your boundaries. When it comes time to set that boundary or course correct somebody, you can do it. You can do it firmly without being a jerk about it or without just relying on because I said so. And people will know that it's coming. Most of the time, people will know that it's coming from a good place. So you can still give that firm course correcting, performance correcting, conversation, and be empathetic and be humble and be connected to your team.
What's your general protocol for advising people in leadership positions to be able to be better at dealing with confrontation or having to confront, say, an employee or somebody who's working for them?
Yeah, practice it. Just you got to practice it. So what I give people, there's a workshop that I lead where we talk about frameworks for conflict management and frameworks for corrective action type conversations. So what I tell leaders is, hey, before you go into the conversation, you have to be prepared for the conversation. You have to plan the outcome that you want. Am I informing somebody? Am I trying to have somebody, or am I influencing somebody? Am I trying to, tell somebody that they're not cutting the mustard and they need to get it together like now? Or am I just telling you, hey, you're not cutting the mustard and it's the first time we're having a conversation, right? So what's the outcome that you want from the conversation? And then you go into then you go into the content of the conversation. And I give them a couple different frameworks. Describe what you observed, express why it's not acceptable, specify what right looks like, give consequences of improvement, give consequences of continued failed behavior or performance. I said, then jot those down and then jot your notes in that framework on that paper, because that gives you the opportunity to have a complete conversation of the content you want to convey. And then before you have the conversation, what tone does it need to be in? Is this a conversation where I want to have a desk between me and the person because it's more formal? Is it a conversation where I need to move out from behind that desk and make it more, chairs and one-on-one? Is it a last chance before you're out the door? Or is it, hey, this is the first time you're coming in and I know that you've got X, Y, Z going on at home. I need to be a little bit more kind and caring. So set that atmosphere. So you're doing all of this so that in that moment you can maintain control, you can maintain composure, and you can set the pace for the conversation.
That seems like it has a considerable amount of forethought that goes into that. Like, adversely, if you were to have a confrontational conversation just, on a whim or impulsively, I could see how it can go much worse, or I could see how it can go awry if you didn't plan for it, because then emotions get involved. And then you might say something that other person was offended by, and then you guys are yelling at each other.
Right. Then you're just doing improv, like you're doing improv in the hallway.
That's
how
a
often
good
does
point.
that work out?
Yeah. It's funny because Brian is like the best.
He's the best arguer we know.
The best
This guy right here.
verbal. He's just like it is improv. Like sometimes we'll just argue for fun. It's like verbal sparring basically, and it's just like,
which is a skill you need.
It's a skill, man. And I tell you what, like, I don't naturally have this skill, I don't think, where, you could just kind of come up with something right back. You could just jab right back, where other people are really good at that. So if you were to be more calculated and you were to think about it beforehand, then you could be at least more prepared for.
Well, think about that. Yeah, you're going into a conversation with somebody that is going to be uncomfortable, and it's uncomfortable for you. So that at least I can control is my comfort level, right? So I can be in the driver's seat, and I try to anticipate. Is this the first time I'm doing this? How's Kevin gonna react? How's Brian gonna react to this message I'm gonna deliver? All right, worst case scenario, they scream and holler and run out the door.
Mhm.
All right, what's the probability of that actually happening? Probably low, but in my head, that's probably what I'm prepared for.
Yeah.
All right, well, what's the next worst thing? He sits there quietly. Okay, got that too. Or what's the next? What's a little bit better than that? Okay, he pushes back, or he denies everything. Okay, I got to be prepared to bring this right back around. Or what do we see happen a lot? Deflection. Oh, you're talking to me about this, but you should see what Darian did. Darian did. Hey, I got that. Understand, appreciate that, but we're talking about you right now in this time and space. If we want to bring that up later, right? So you can bring it right back because, he just deflected, but he caught me off guard because I wasn't prepared with what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it.
When you were growing up, say from 17, and you were finding yourself in these leadership positions, what do you think your main deficiencies were as a leader that you had to work on?
Oh man, I was hot-headed, quick-tempered.
Really?
And, yeah. Which people that see me now,
Yeah,
like,
you don't
I
get
don't
that.
believe that. I'm like,
Really?
it is deep. It is
Yeah.
deep within. Yeah. When I was, I've made my fair share of mistakes leading people, and part of it was probably, ego. Part of it was probably, I don't like to be challenged. So early on, my deficiency was probably the need to be right and to be in control constantly. And people that stepped up and challenged that or disrespected that, man, it was not going to be a good few moments in there.
So it became like a pissing match, like a power struggle kind of.
Yeah, man, but I would drop the hammer of Thor on him, and it wasn't a power struggle anymore because I was Lieutenant Ramey and you're Private so-and-so, and I could,
Interesting.
Right. So, but I had a couple great senior NCOs that yanked my collar when they saw that.
What is a senior NCO?
Oh, so in the military, you've got your officer corps, and then you've got your senior non-commissioned officer corps. So your sergeants.
Okay.
Now, I might have quote unquote outranked somebody as an officer, but those senior NCOs, those senior sergeants, had a lot more time in uniform than me. They were older than me. So my the way my first assignment worked was I was a platoon leader. So I was the officer in charge, but then I had my right hand was my platoon sergeant. So E7, sergeant first class, who had been in the military for 16, 15, 14, 15 years, whatever it may be. And here I am, like, day 3. They cared for me enough to say that's not the right way. That's not the best way to lead. There might be a time and place for it. Very, very rarely. You're pulling it out too much. Don't let anybody pull your punch card. Don't let anybody ever take control of your emotions to where you're acting like that, right? So they steered me back on quickly. So what I thought was, let me puff my chest and show my I ended up showing my rear end. That's what I ended up being. But I wanted to show that bravado.
Yeah.
Man, that's not the right way to lead, and I've learned that, right? Because I said, well, I hate when it happens to me, and that was like the brick wall moment. If I don't like when it happens to me, why would I act that way to somebody else? Part of it was I didn't know how to act any other way. So unfortunately, people think like especially junior or emerging leaders, like, oh, they're in a leadership position, they must have it all together, and we don't. And it's trial and error, and people are going to make mistakes, which is why I've learned, like, hey, be humble, because you're going to make a mistake, and someone's going to see it, and someone's going to call you on it. Just accept it.
Yeah.
So then when somebody on your team makes a mistake and you call them on it, that's candor, which is where magic happens. That's positive conflict. But if you're one where you're just puffing chest and pushing and doing that and being quick tempered, quick triggered, and wanting to show that you're the man, that's not going to go over well very long because you're going to slip up somewhere.
It's not going to last long term. It won't be efficient long term.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And that's what for me. So early on, that deficiency there was was spotted. I saw it, and I had a lot of good people that cared for me enough to course correct it.
So how did you figure that out? Like, there's no doubt that there might have been some anger in that situation. And when anger arises, it's hard to not act impulsively. So, like, what did you do? What are some strategies that you use? Were you into, like, mindfulness to be able to better manage your emotions in those kind of scenarios?
Yeah, so I have spent a lot of time and effort in understanding my emotions, recognizing when it comes up, letting it kind of wash over me and out, and having it be temporary. And that was something I just learned recently as I'm trying to practice this is emotions are meant to be temporary, and they're indicators of something that's happening. They're not meant to be held on to for a long time.
Yeah.
Right? Think about that. How long does happiness last, or how long does sadness last? Right?
Yeah.
Right? If you resist it, if you resist that emotion and you try to hold it in, it's gonna manifest and stay there and just grind at you, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm resisting this idea of I don't like being challenged, and I feel I'm not challenged, I'm resisting the fact that I don't like being challenged, instead of saying, well, why don't I like being challenged? Well, this person's just trying to input their 2 cents, or maybe they have something else going on, right? So now you can even tell, like, hey, I start calming myself back down. I start coming back down to reality, right?
Yeah.
So the idea of not resisting an emotion, having it come up, if it's a trigger, if it's triggering something in you, acknowledging it, accepting it, trying to figure out and understand it so that it doesn't take control and steer you in the wrong direction or on the wrong path. So I've tried to practice that. And then secondly, if it's in the moment, being okay saying, this is not the right time for this conversation.
Yeah.
If it's urgent, like, give me 5 minutes.
Yep.
And then detach from the situation, take my 5 minutes, do some box breathing, whatever I need to do to come back to it, so that I don't try to just push through and get done, and the conversation doesn't go well, and the person on the other end isn't experiencing that well, and I look like an idiot because I'm just off in left field with whatever's still kind of manifesting and coming up. So, what I learned was, when you put people first and you try to, no kidding, gain their perspective, and you try to listen with empathy, it takes practice, it takes energy, it takes emotion to do. But when you can do that, then you can understand yourself better, you can understand others better, and you become more and more emotionally intelligent.
Yeah, that's cool. That's something I really want to get into. I heard this quote that I really like, and knowing the quote doesn't mean that I've adopted the skill, but what you resist persists.
Yes.
And it's weird because, like, I'll talk for myself, but when I have negative emotions sometimes, I'll cling on to them. Like, I'll attach myself to them, and it's like I don't want to let them go, but I know as soon as they're gone, I'm going to feel better, obviously. It's a weird thing that happens within me that I don't really understand, but you say something really interesting about what he just said. It was people try to listen to respond and not to understand.
Yes. It's like I seen it was like an Instagram post. I seen about it one day, but it was like the analogy was like 2 sponges, and the one was like the person, if you listen to respond, it's like the sponge is already saturated, it's full, the water kind of just bounces off. But if you're listening to understand, it's like you're absorbing what they're telling you. It's like the dry sponge. You can still take in water. Pretty much is the idea of that.
I love that idea. I've heard that phrase before, and that's what when I talk about leaders and communication, it's always, hey, seek to understand. Seek to understand first what's happening with you. Not just I observe something and let me go tell you what's going on with it, but understand and ask. You do that by asking more questions. If you find yourself leading people and you're doing a lot more directing, depending on how strong your team is, but if you're doing a lot more directing than you are questioning and asking, then are you really learning and growing? Are you helping your team self-discover?
Yeah.
If I just tell you what to do, you're not going to self-discover. So if I don't seek to understand your position, then I don't really know what's going on. I'm guessing what's going on, right? So the idea of asking, being inquisitive, drawing something out of somebody, you're going to discover something that you didn't know was there that might be a cause or might be impacting this person's performance or how they're behaving or how they're acting. It's the same way with or very similar to, what you resist persists. Understand what's coming up. I had a conversation with, I just started doing executive coaching here recently, and I had a conversation about that self-talk and that inner critic. I'm saying, hey, I don't want to wrestle my inner critic because then I'm just wrestling that all day long. I want my inner critic and that self-talk to ride shotgun with me. All right, think of that analogy. I want them to ride shotgun where I can see them, I can understand them, we can have a conversation, but I'm still behind the wheel.
Yeah.
If I resist that, I let that inner critic or that inner talk take over, man, they're stepping on the gas, they're driving the wheel like the car. I'm not driving the car anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want to give that control up, but I don't just want to pretend that they don't exist either, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I really start identifying and being able to tap into this self-awareness of emotions and what's coming up, and why am I not doing this when I really want to get to this end goal? What's in my way, and why do I feel a certain way, in this situation? Instead of ruminating and holding on to it, have that conversation, and then you can move forward.
Yeah. So what's the difference between what you call shared leadership and is it top-down leadership?
Yeah, hierarchical. So hierarchy. So I love the idea of shared leadership. I want to give a shout out to Dr. Lauren DiNicenzo, Drexel University. She's a friend and colleague of mine that really opened my eyes up to this concept of shared leadership and understanding it through research. This principle of shared leadership is that everybody has a capacity to lead, and that although you may have in a hierarchy a team leader, everybody has an opportunity to lead and follow depending on what is best for the team. Compared to a traditional hierarchy, think about like the old industrial age of leadership. You got a shop foreman who stands up on the mezzanine and they watch the shop floor and they're telling you what to do and they're telling you what to do, and they're just, top down. Do as I say, I lead, you follow.
That's it.
Period.
Yeah.
Shared leadership is, hey, who's got the expertise for this? We have a sales call, or we have an engineer, or we have, the team is in this phase of an operation, and we need this. And Kevin, you've got great skills, putting this together. Darren, you've got great skills, actually being the front man. Would you mind working together? You take this part, you take that part, and then when it comes time to pitch, you've got lead on it. What support do you need from us? So it's this idea of when you set the conditions where a team feels psychologically safe to use their voice, to try new things, and fear is absent of, fear of failure is absent, fear of making mistakes is absent. And then you start to set conditions where people feel valued. They feel not only do they have a seat at the table, but they have a voice at the table. And then you move that to our communication processes, how we share information. Everyone's transparent. People have access to it. I'm asking, not just inviting people to the conversation, but I'm encouraging you to pull your thoughts out. And then I'm giving you opportunity and space to influence, to communicate, to take on a role that may be above what you're functionally here to do for the good of the team. So the idea is that leadership and followership ebb and flow.
It's like the yin yang.
Yes, sir.
It's like the yin yang. It stays in balance, and you're playing to people's strengths. So now, instead of having one person who's a team leader and a team of followers, now you have a team of leaders who are capable of leading each other, leading up, leading down, right? And it's about the influence, the give and take, the connection, the communication that's happening on that team. It's been shown through research, teams that share leadership are 34%, one study in a couple of different industries, 34% higher performance. So when you think about that, if you've worked on a team or you guys played sports, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was just going to reference that too. I think like I see that at another level too, like in terms of, because he and I are big football fans. Like you could see that with like in the NFL, there are certain teams that have that element of shared leadership where it's not one individual that you look to. Like I was going to use I can't think of the name, the Patriots as an example with like Tom Brady, but I don't think that was necessarily true. But you do see that in the NFL where there's like teams with star players that have like emotions invested into the game, and it seems like they kind of let it bleed out into play. While there's other teams, like you could say like the Chiefs, who they don't, I mean, you could say Mahomes or somebody like that, but they don't have one guy that they depend on. They really flow well as a team. They got great coaches, they got great players, and they work hand in hand.
Yep.
So I'm guessing that's probably where you were going with this.
That's a very good analogy to it. 100%.
So what do you do with your company, Shared Leadership LLC? How does that work?
I do leadership and team development workshops. So what I do with shared leadership is really a hands-on, minds-on approach to teaching teams about leadership, teaching teams about things like collaboration, cohesion, power sources at work, how to deal with stress at work. I just did a workshop, for a client where we talked about how to build trust, and we actually played out two different leadership styles: authoritarian, top-down style, compared to collective, shared leadership style, and how that affects performance. And I do that through creative integration, creative methodologies. So I do Lego Serious Play as a form of learning. I do things like, we did a Mars rover experiment where teams were broken down into, teams, and you had, a packet of connects, and you had to build a rover, and you're going to lead the team with authoritative style. You're going to lead the team with empowering style. And at the end, we're gonna measure your product, a Mars rover, on cost, speed, and durability. I've run this workshop with experimental learning a dozen times. Every time I've run it, the authoritative style, the top-down, centralized, choking out leadership style performs last.
Interesting.
Every time. And I hold my breath when we get results, because if it doesn't go that way, then I got to like figure out what happened. But they perform the worst. And then usually the empowering, the collective leadership style performs better on those three things. So what you see play out, I had a client tell me,
That's
literally,
crazy. That is nuts.
they're watching people do this, and they say, I literally saw these styles play out in front of my eyes. And that is why I love incorporating the experiential learning, because we talk about a subject so you can understand it or you can think about it.
Yeah.
And then I give you an experience designed to pull that out so you can literally experience what it's like. And then we come back and debrief, and you learn how to apply it at work. All right, so let's take what you learned here about building a Mars rover under these conditions. How does that show up for you at work? How does the opportunity to communicate, or how's the opportunity to share information, or how's the opportunity to collectively come together on a task? How does that show up for you in your office or in your workspace? What can you learn from that?
Yeah.
So I take all of these research-backed principles about leading people and about working together on teams. I package it up in a way where learning is going to stick. Experiential learning has been shown to increase learning retention from 20% upwards of 80%. So imagine the next time you come out of class, right, if your students retained 80% of what you said, because traditionally it's 20, and they had fun doing it, right? So the trust workshop I just did literally was about people understanding how they're coming across building trust with their teams, and we did it with Legos. So the Lego Serious Play method is a well-researched approach to learning, and you think about it as a communication method. I ask you a question, you build your answer out of Legos, and then you tell your story of the model that you built to the team that we're doing a workshop with, and then we come together to talk about what you learned. So think about that for a second.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you a question like, Kevin, how do you become more collaborative, or how can you collaborate better with your podcast team?
Yeah.
You could give that answer, and I have to interpret words.
Okay.
But if I ask you, how can you be more collaborative with your podcast team? And I give you 5 minutes to build a model out of Legos. Here's what people tend to do.
Yeah.
Color starts to speak to people.
Interesting.
Shape and structure start to speak with people. Now you have this tangible 3D model of a thought that you're able to point to and say, well, I can be more collaborative. Like, hey, I put these black blocks up here because these represent like the gaps in my skill set for technical expertise. But I've got Brian over here on my model who's helping me learn this. And you have something in that represents that. So you start speaking in metaphor. So it helps you explain things in a greater depth. It helps you receive what he's explaining in a greater depth. So now you've got a tighter connection, a better understanding. The feedback I get is the acceleration of getting to know who's in the room, the acceleration of my understanding their position, and people are playing with Legos. I mean, it's a fun day.
That's so cool.
And you're typically doing this with, like, you would say more adults, right?
Oh, 100%. So I've run this locally for Leadership Northeast Juniors program, Leadership Lackawanna. Tomorrow's Leaders Today is juniors in high school.
Yeah.
And I do a collaboration workshop where I use Lego Serious Play. But my target audience is corporate. So
that's cool.
I've worked with lawyer firms, partnership firms. I've worked with insurance companies. I've worked with Department of Defense.
Yeah.
I've worked with academics. I just did a workshop. I've worked with Fortune 50 companies.
Yeah.
And we break out the Legos, and there's something. Even the skeptics.
We should try that.
That's interesting.
We should try it one day.
Yeah.
You know what I think would be a really cool experiment? Have you ever tried an escape room before?
Oh, that's
I haven't, but that would be. So there's I saw an activity from a company that designs it, but it's an online simulation. But I would love to take somebody to an actual, take a team to an actual escape room and then debrief that.
Because
that would be excellent. I think that might be one of the best forms.
Oh,
of figuring
100%.
out,
well, think about if you were able to analyze and measure that, because we all just went to Austin,
Yeah.
Texas recently. We were recording some podcasts out there.
Awesome.
But they have these it's a branch. It's called
Escape games.
Escape games. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got the
Do you, oh yeah, it's on the bottom.
the
I
sticker.
escaped
Oh,
it.
nice.
I
Yeah,
escaped.
I escaped.
By the way, we barely escaped. We needed it like 5 hints or whatever.
Yeah, so you peel that back, right? You can get into things like, well, how did you decision making,
Yeah.
problem solving? How did you decide who's going to do what? Like all the, communication. How you can break that down into
Yeah.
these team dynamics that need to occur at work, but people are going to have a blast learning, and I guarantee they'll remember that time, and they'll remember more of what they learned when
yeah.
they have fun doing it.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Like the last one we did in Austin, so it was called Prison Break.
Yep.
And so it was 2 jail cells. It was me and JJ in one cell, and it was Brian, Kevin, and David in another cell. And we had to collaborate. We couldn't see each other, but we had to collaborate so that we can get the key for their cell, and then they can get the key for our
Yeah.
cell, so that we could both escape.
Okay.
And there was a series of steps that we had to get through to be able to escape this room. But I would wonder, like, the way we collaborated was very effective.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask. I was gonna say, based off a lot of the things he's saying, like, how do you guys genuinely think that we did in terms of like teamwork?
Well, here's what I think. Here's how I think I played a role. Because Brian's like the puzzle guy. He's the logic guy. He's really good at chess. Like, that's where I think his brain is like more inclined to.
Okay.
But I don't know. What role do you think you played in that situation? Because Kevin's similar to Brian in that, like, he's a puzzle guy as well.
Well, the reason I brought that up initially is because based off a lot of the things we're talking about, I actually don't think we were that effective in terms of our collaboration. At least when we were in the prison cells themselves, but I think once we got outside of that, it got a little crazy.
True.
I want to know, like, I know you don't have a mic with you right now, sadly, but I want to know what Brian thought about that too. It seemed to me like that part where you were in the cells, you obviously needed each other. So like, X was relying on Y was relying on X. We needed each other to get out of the cells. But after that, it seemed like there was a lot of, missing pieces. Like there was a couple different things we had to solve and a lot of missing pieces.
Yeah.
It seemed like after that, once we were in, like, you could say the middle room and then going up into sorry for spoilers. I doubt this will spoil anything, but like the cog room, like all the machines and like, the gadgets and whatnot.
Yeah.
It seemed like once we got in there was like communication and collaboration, but it seemed like a lot of people kind of went their own way
Yep.
to solve, like, say we had 5 problems, there's 5 of us, everybody kind of went to their own problem. Is what it seemed like we did.
It probably would have been more effective if we were like, yo, let's figure this out first. And we kind of
Yeah.
work as a team to figure out piece one. And then
Yeah.
but we all did kind of do our own
Yeah.
thing.
It was a group of 5 leaders. No one like, everyone wanted to, like, was trying to be like, yo, you should go look at this. And I'm like, hold on, no, I'm doing this. Like,
Yeah.
no one took charge because everyone had to
That's like a part of the ego thing. We were also timed too, so I wonder how much that plays a part in it. Like,
It does. So think of the constraints that you set on yourself at work, either self-inflicted or otherwise. You get constraints, and then these things play out of, if I don't plan how I want to solve this problem, we're going to go to our natural tendencies. A lot of people compete over collaborate.
Yeah.
Right? So
we were trying to, like, who can get the most riddles right.
Well, that's what it is, right? So,
Yeah.
so it sounds like the 5 of you, once it went from your task was dependent on people working together to now your task is still dependent on people working together, but you had the ability to work on your own. Well, I'm going to solve this one. I'm going to solve it first. And now you're starting to work simultaneously, whereas maybe you had opportunity to pull more brain power, pull more expertise if you paired up or worked in twos or worked in. So, but it's interesting when you put people in that situation, like, your natural behavior comes out.
Yeah.
It's the same way at work, but you're doing it much better.
You know what we should
I'm going to
do?
jot this down. I got to take this idea back with me
No.
and set this up.
We always like to collaborate with our podcast guests.
Yeah.
We should go to an escape room.
We should do it.
Yeah.
Would
That'd
you do
be
it?
sick.
Would you be down?
Absolutely.
Let's
Yeah,
do something like that.
that'd
And
be
then we
so
could,
cool.
and then you could kind of like observe us, but also be a part of the team as well. And you can help us to sharpen up a little bit in terms of maybe our teamwork and how
I
we
don't know.
collaborate.
I don't
But
know how
I
we'd
think you'd
film
enjoy
it.
it.
That'd be
though.
awesome. Yeah.
It'd be so much. It'd be so cool. But that's like the classic idea that we talk about with, like, the YouTube side of, like, podcast creating
Yeah.
is, like, doing a video out of that. That'd be really
I
cool.
wonder
just
if they'd
don't know
let
how we
us.
would.
Like, the title would be something like "Trying to Escape a Prison with a Leadership Expert" or something like that.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
that'd be cool, man.
I don't know what necessarily it is within me or why I am this way, but I definitely think I have a lot of, like, control freak type tendencies when it comes to certain things. I like having the fate of what happens to me in my own hands. I believe that's what it is. And I don't necessarily know how to work my way out of it now, especially now that, like, because he and I, we're like the main two that run the Go Getters channel. So, like, he and I are cousins. I don't know if you knew that. We've known each other our entire life. So with us, it's very easy. Like, I don't have that problem with him necessarily, But when it comes to like me, and it might be somebody that I don't know as well, I rather be the one to like go through the trial and error. That way, if I get it right, I know I got it right because I was able to do it. And if I got it wrong, I also want to know that that's my deficiency, that I need to work on that.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily know how to work my way out of that problem.
Yeah. So, what you're describing, what resonated with me was this idea of territorial loss, right? So sometimes leaders, especially people who've led a team and maybe they've got new members or they've expanded, or where I've seen it recently is business owners. Hey, I'm a solo business owner, and it's time for me to make my first hire, or it's time for me to grow my team. But nobody can do this just how I want it done. I've got this territory that I'm comfortable with, that I know I want to control. I want this done a certain way. I trust myself. I'd rather make the mistake myself, and I don't want to give it up.
We're in this very position.
But if you're gonna grow
Yeah.
and you're gonna expand, you've got to be able to bring people onto your team that understand, here's my intent, some people say, here's my brand, here's the the feel, the experience I want, but you've got to give that person room and trust them, which means there's going to be a letting go.
Yeah.
And that's where leaders who tend to centralize things, they tie up tight because they don't want to let go, because it's just easier, it's just faster if I do it, or I'm going to be upset if you do it wrong. But what are we missing with that? We're missing the opportunity to develop the next incoming person. We're missing the opportunity to bring somebody on our team who's going to have a wide range of skill sets.
Yeah.
And then if you take a step back and say, well, of course they don't know how to do this yet. It's going to take them time. It took me 3 months to figure out, I shouldn't build my own website, but it took me, 97 hours of doing it, and it looks like garbage. And then $1,500 later, I have a beautiful website that I didn't build myself. I work with somebody on, but I had to let the idea of that go. So a little bit of it is, think about territorial loss, and people don't like to give up territory, especially when you've built it yourself. The other part is trust takes time to build. So you bring somebody in who I've always been an advocate, you hire for character and you can train for competency. I'd much rather have somebody who's got good character and just enough aptitude, and I can train them or teach them the process, the way of doing things. But I can have a technical expert who's just a jerk and rubs people the wrong way or doesn't communicate well with customers. Like, I'd rather I'd hire for character, train for competence. But trust takes time, and trust takes time. You can trust somebody's cognitive abilities because people think, I was in the Army, I have a degree, I have this, I have all these kind of symbols of competence, of cognitive ability. But the affective side of trust, the emotional side of trust, there's not a big fast forward button for that. You've got to be able to go through the iterations of, you did this, I said this. Let's teach you. Let's come back. This wasn't right. This was this. That's built over time, and then you go through these shared experiences together, and that's where those bonds start to form.
Yeah.
So if you're able and willing to let go and build trust over time, that's how you're going to be able to bring people. One way to bring people onto your team, and feel confident in their abilities to execute how you see fit.
Yeah. How did that come to fruition with like your show, Leadership Decoded, and everything you do? Because you partnered with On the Stacks, you partnered with Bill.
Oh yeah.
What was that like, kind of giving? Well, and again, I don't really know the structure, to be fair, but I'd imagine there's a bit of like editing or creative control over like the type of content that you release. Not control, that was a bad word for it, but how does that work for you in that setting of like allowing, say it's Eric to do all the editing and he does it a certain way, you might want it done a certain way. Like, how's that been like with you joining that big team?
Yeah. So, first and foremost, Bill and Eric and Jimmy, the whole On the Stacks team has been phenomenal. Help me out with that. I know my strengths, and creativity is not one of them. So Bill's like, hey, what do you think about these graphics? What do you think about this artwork? I'm like, yep.
That's not your thing.
Sounds great, right? Sounds good to me. The first thing he sent me was this black and white mock-up. And I was good with it. I'm like, black and white, simple
Jocko
enough,
style.
right? Just plain and simple. That's not the end product. The end product, he had a lot more of that. What if we bring in like the Army colors, green and gold, and we've got these things coming in. I had to trust him to take the time to know me, to have something that would reflect who I am and the premise of the show. So it was full trust there. where I got into a little bit of the early, like, I'll call them growing pains, because the team's been phenomenal to work with, is the content. I was very much wanting to do Leadership Decoded was where we're going to bring in like all this research and all this, I wanted to bring in like the academic side of leadership and translate it to plain speak so people can understand it, feel it, and apply it. And I was very much on the, hey, this is the right term, right terminology. This is accurate. And Jimmy Martin, phenomenal outside set of eyes there. Hey, I'm telling you, this might be right, but this is not how people are going to understand it. This is not layman speak. What are you trying to say? And I would just say it in plain terms. He goes, you got to say that here. You got to say this here, because although it might be, academically accurate or research accurate, people aren't going to understand it. Who are you speaking to? You're trying to get the people that understand things. 1, 2, it's not going to catch anybody's eye if I have things on there like, cognitive biases. But if I plain speak on, hey, you ever find yourself anchoring to the first idea that gets thrown out? That's going to be a problem for you if you make decisions. Well, anchoring bias is a cognitive bias. So if I'm titling something and it reads like a research paper, who the heck is going to want to catch that? So at first I was resisting the idea of I've got to have academic integrity 100%. And it's like, well, no, there's a middle ground here. There's a way to be able to translate this to keep the academic integrity, but then to also reach the audience who want to hear. So once I detach from that and kind of just, all right, I see what you're saying. I see your point. How about we come here? I can compromise here. I can compromise there. So the iterations of working through that with Jimmy and with Bill, I can see that the end product is so much better. And he's, getting people saying, hey, I don't know what you did. It was like the 10th or 12th episode in. That was another thing Bill had. I had a screen behind me because I wanted to say things the right way in a certain way, and I had the script written out. Yeah. But I couldn't memorize. We know 60 minutes worth of stuff here. Yep. And I didn't want to have it be memorized. Anyhow, so I'm doing this, and they're trying to match the camera up with my eye line, and I'm doing this, and I'm getting all bug-eyed and crazy. I'm like, he just looks robotic, right? So Bill said, hey, what if you move your computer here, and we cut the screen behind you? I said, yeah, that'd be great. I just need notes to refer to. And we did that, and it's a lot more organic, right? Because who wouldn't have the notes that they refer to them back up versus trying to hide it, and I'm sitting here all stiff and do. So to see the iterations and see the transformation has been great. And then Eric came up with the things that I never even thought of.
He's a wizard when it comes to
the shirt.
Yeah.
Now, if you notice in the show,
we did notice that.
So he said patterns don't show well. This stripes don't show well. He just try to wear plain solid color shirts. Well, my solid color shirts are typically blue. Yeah. And then they put the full wood panel backdrop in, and it came in with he said, hey, bring a dark blue shirt with you next time. He said, I love that shirt. So I either got to buy like 5 more of them, or so I have my recording shirt hung up in my closet. But it works for him, and he said he loved it. I said, so hey, I'm not gonna change it right now. Maybe I'll try something new next time. So part of it is if I have we got into one part where I was doing a multi-part series. And Jimmy suggested, hey, don't change clothes multi-part series. You got to keep the same shirt for the entire series. Well, I recorded it on 2 different days. Oh, my God. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to wear the same shirt every time I show up.
It limits your decision-making. You don't have to make a decision on that. I was just going to ask you about that.
Yeah. Who coined that idea? You said it was somebody very prevalent.
It was Steve Jobs. Okay. Yeah. He would wear the same fit. Yep. And you know who does that now?
Lex Friedman and
Alex Huberman do the same thing. Yep. It's better for it's more recognizable, and I guess it's also a bit more familiar. I don't know. And I guess it does help with the decision-making process as well, so that you're not like, oh, what do I wear? How does it seem on camera?
Yeah, I do that. Every morning I hit one of these. I just got to rub the chin for a second. What shirt do I want to wear today?
And it's like a a little bit of time that you're using every single day, and thought process and energy that you're spending towards trying to figure that out. This is typically my pod shirt, but sometimes I switch it up, though.
No, man, you guys looking good. You got the team logo on.
We're like Men in Black today.
Yeah, I love it. It's funny. I was just it was right before you got here, but I was just mentioning to him, this is the second pod in a row where we did that unintentionally, at least on my part. I think you knew I was wearing the shirt before you put that on, right?
Yeah, but I plan on wearing it anyway.
The last one, we just showed up, and we were like the Spider-Man meme. We were just like looking at each other.
That's really cool, though. I mean, that's really a cool dynamic that you got over there on OTS. Like, you have all those different team members, and it seems like that's exactly what you're, providing in these workshops. It seems like a shared leadership experience where, you do the pod and people have their creative inputs, and obviously, I'm blanking. What's his name?
Who, Jimmy? Or
No. Bill?
Brian?
No.
Eric.
Eric.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Eric. Yeah. He has his creative expertise with editing and filming and that type of stuff, and they all kind of contribute in their own unique way.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. One question that I have is, do you think from all of your experience in leadership positions, do you think that there are leadership archetypes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, so it was funny. I had a very tenured professor who kind of challenged that notion. So we get into research. You hear things like transformational leader, servant leader, empowering leader. Right? You ever hear those servant leader probably come across?
I haven't heard that, but I wonder, like, when you're doing these workshops, can you identify, like, oh, okay, well, they're taking this role, or they're, maybe falling within this archetype of leadership role or whatever?
Yeah. So if you think of leaders have a set of behaviors and abilities, and when we start to group those together to try to make sense of them, to teach them, you put this group of characteristics together, and you're going to call that servant leadership.
Got it.
You put this group of characteristics together, and you're going to call that empowering leadership. And you're going to put this group together and call that toxic leadership behaviors, right? So you can start to see people that have a strength that they rely on more than another. But the advanced practice of leadership is when you can say, hey, in this context, I need to be more transformational. In this context, I need to be more empowering. In this context, I need to be more of this type of leader, because there's so much that goes into it. Team tenure, team experience, team, and I look at it from the angle of, what does my team need? What type of leader does my team need me to be? So if I can draw on this set of characteristics or this set of characteristics, I know that lines up with a certain leadership archetype, which should give me a certain outcome, then I can draw on those different skills and apply them based on what the situation and the team needs.
That's pretty cool. I like the shared leadership idea. That seems like it'd be much more effective, because I think when people have their own ideas, like I think I heard Jocko talking about this at one point. He was tasked with leading a group of people, and instead of saying, here's what we're doing, like this is the type of maneuver that we're going to make, he collaborated with everybody, and they kind of worked on coming up with a team plan. And when they came up with the plan, and everybody kind of had a contribution of like, well, we should take this entrance, and we should deploy these type of maneuvers and these tactics. Everybody's contributed, therefore everybody's completely bought in, because they all put in their own ingredients to make the pie or whatever. 100%. So they're all invested into it.
Yeah, he talks about extreme ownership, and the company there it has a lot of the military premises where everyone's got a capacity to lead, regardless of title. So when you build that into people and you build their confidence and their awareness into leading, you get better ideas, you get more creative solutions. I'll share a quick story with you. So one of the positions I held was a maintenance recovery team officer in charge when I was in the military. I was deployed to Iraq. One of our additional duties was I had a team of about 20 soldiers, and we would go out on the supply routes, and we would recover damaged or destroyed weapon systems. So if you were driving along the convoy on the supply route and you got hit with an improvised explosive device and you were in our designated area of operation, we'd go out and bring that weapon system or vehicle back off the routes to keep the supply routes clear.
Yeah.
And so that the enemy doesn't get them and turn them into weapons of their own, right?
Yeah.
So that was a role that I had. Now, every mission was different. From the weather to the site to the condition of the vehicle we're recovering. Because imagine, like, it's not just a broke down Chevy on the side of 380. It's a Chevy that no longer has the center cab, but the front and the back are still there. So the center of gravity is different. Again, most of our missions were at night. One happened, it's when things tended to pop off over there. So I had a team where I was the highest ranking person. I was responsible for, first and foremost, bringing everyone back alive, safe and sound. And we had this job to do where the conditions were highly varied. Well, I had to rely on the expertise of my team members to come up with a plan, because we would get an intel brief and then we would go, and it wasn't 100% accurate all the time. In fact, it was probably 75% accurate most of the time, right? So we'd go and something would shift, or conditions would change, or there's a piece of information missing, and we would discover it on the way there. So I had to build a team of people that were able to use their voice, able to influence and think creatively and creatively problem solve. So we executed like over 75 missions. No fatalities on our team.
Wow.
Everyone came back safe and sound, and we recovered everything that we were sent out to recover. Some were a little bit more scary and longer than others, but the team, to see them come together and use their expertise and, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Their ability then to pick up speed, because like Jocko talks about, here's the intent. The intent is to go out and recover these vehicles. Here's your left and right limits of what you have decision authority over. Here's our rules of engagement. And then I took responsibility for anything that went wrong up front before we left. I said, hey, if anything goes south, I'm responsible, which took that load off my team. It took the weight off of them of that, so that they could think about getting creative or being able to take risk on something calculated if it got us done faster, if it got something back better. So I had to create those conditions where people that were subordinate to me in rank, and they came up with some ingenious ideas on how to get quicker, faster, more effective and efficient, because the longer we were out on site, the more dangerous it got.
I would imagine that would put a lot more pressure on you, though. No,
That's what I was going to ask. Like, what does that do to your mind state?
Yeah, so it was a high pressure environment to begin with, but what it did for me was it enabled me to trust my team. There's moments where it was, I'm getting close to jumping in and saying, hey, we can't do that. But I felt myself saying, okay, let's see this play out. No one's getting hurt. They've done safety checks. They're doing safety protocols. So, it would wear on me quite a bit. But the recovery from that, the end product, the end state is, hey, we did this together. Camaraderie was through the roof. Celebrating the big win, or I can't believe I can't believe that just happened. Did
pulled
you see
that off.
We pulled that off. That was nuts.
I know. What's that dap up like?
Oh, yeah. That's legendary.
It's crazy, right? So the one time, and my team was funny, man, and I'd be open enough for them to kind of poke fun at me a little bit. So rewind, it'll be it's 20 years. It's 20 years ago this year where I was deployed.
Wow.
So imagine the face, just less crow's feet and gray, no glasses. I had contacts. A little bit higher fade. So my team called me that Vanilla Ice would come out every now and again, right? And I just had that. I had that look.
Yeah.
So we were out on mission, and my team made a mistake. I let them try something new. Nobody got hurt. I let them try something new. One of our rules of engagement with vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices, before we were able to engage that target directly with our weapons, we had to go through a series of steps. Honk the horn, flash the lights, wave them off. And then we got told we had to fire a flare, to try to warn them that if you keep coming at us, something bad's going to happen.
So this is when an oncoming vehicle is...
Yes. So here we are. So imagine a convoy of like 7 heavy-duty military vehicles that are probably topping out about 55 miles an hour going down the road in Iraq. And we were in Tikrit was my area of operation. Tikrit, Mosul, Baji was that triangle there. And so picture yourself on the highway today, and you've got like 5 cars that you have to try to keep together without letting anybody break into them. And it's a 2-lane road, 1 lane this way, 1 lane that way. And now you get a vehicle off in the distance, or you get a vehicle trying to pass you on the left that shouldn't be passing you on the left, coming from behind, or a vehicle that's coming into your lane from the front. Like, I hate the old word problems, like if a train left New York traveling 75 miles an hour in Los Angeles at 80 miles an hour, who's going to get where first?
Yeah.
But that's basically what you have, is you've got 2 big moving things moving at a fast rate of speed. And we have to make the decision, are they a threat or aren't they? And, the rules of engagement are there for a reason. They're there to protect you. They're there to protect the civilian population. We were there to protect and serve as well. So to prevent a mishap, per se, you had to go through these steps. Well, one of the steps was to fire a flare. Well, my team's, the way the flares work, there's a tube, and then there's the top cap. On the top cap, on the inside of the top cap, there's a pin. So you take the cap off, you put it on the bottom, and you pop it.
Yeah.
Right. So my team got the bright idea that they were going to electrical tape the caps to the bottom so that they didn't have to take it off. All they had to do was
With their
pop it
hands.
if they needed it. So they put it right by the turret gunner.
Ooh.
I didn't know that piece.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that sounds. I said, you guys sure? No, we're sure. So we get on site. I just gave my sergeant, hey, push the gun truck up here. You're gonna, where are you setting up? Where are you setting up your site? I'm gonna set it up here. So we just got the plan together for how we're gonna recover this system. Now we had 40-ton crane, so we have to offload the crane. It was a big operation. Well, often I'm looking at him, and off this way goes one of the Humvees, and I hear poof, and then I look, and I see smoke billow out. And I start this $1 million man. I'm going Mach 5, and I'm a big dude. I don't run fast. I'm tearing down there to find out what's going on. And my guys are falling out of the Humvee. I thought they hit a mine, but I'm like, it wasn't. That wasn't that big of an explosion. And I'm looking. I'm like, there's nobody there. I'm like, did they get hit with something? And that's my first thought. So I'm booking. They're falling out, rolling over each other. I pop open the back of the Humvee. I grabbed the fire extinguisher because the vehicle had smoke and was starting to have some flame, and we had ammunition.
Oh, yeah.
So I pull the whole thing out. And the driver, I said, nobody got hurt. This is where it kind of gets, military humor is comical. The one guy comes out, and his eyebrows, he looks like Wile E. Coyote.
Got torched.
His eyebrows are the flare went off inside the vehicle accidentally.
Huh.
It rolled in, he tried to catch it, and he popped it inside.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
So, we laughed about it. So I said, okay, guys, well, we got something to figure out. You still got to pull security here, but now you've got a problem. We've got all this fire extinguisher powder on the inside of a vehicle. It's 130 degrees outside. You have to have your windows up because it's ballistic glass.
Yeah.
And the air conditioner is just going to blow all this powder around. So you've got to hurry up and clean it out. So they gave them the direction. We do mission. Mission is a success. We get back. Hey, let's get back. We're going to do our after-action review and talk about what went well, what didn't go well, what we need to improve for next time. Number one on my list was stop prepping the flares that way, right? So here's my team, the 4 guys that were in this Humvee. The crew starts going ding, 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 and they're walking in a conga line. They took their tops off. They cut the bottom of their brown T-shirts to put them on as dust masks to drive back. So I've got a crew of soldiers now who put on the Vanilla Ice tune, who's trying to poke back fun at me, and they're walking in with halter tops, fashioned out of nothing because that's what they had to work with over there. So I say that because everything went well. It was a near miss safety incident. We figured it out. We overcame that, but the team still came together. Yeah. And you say, hey, what's the dab up look like from there? Man, we would laugh about everything because you had to. It took the pressure off. But you still learned. You were still responsible. You still performed at your best. But, man, we had to – when it was time to laugh, we laughed. Yeah. Yeah, we worked hard. We played hard. And that was probably one of the best teams I got to lead because here I am, 23 years old in Iraq.
That's us, bro.
I was just about to say, I'm damn near about to be 23.
That's us.
I can't even imagine it.
I was second in charge of I was the executive officer for my company, so it was 300 soldiers, and I had that side job we had to do. I shared. We had 2 teams. One was led by a chief warrant officer. The other one I took over, partway through and led that team there. And it's surreal. Like 23 years old, you're in charge of these people's lives and bringing everyone home safe. And now you're going outside of an operating base into a combat zone. Like looking back, like in the moment, it was nothing. Yeah. So the pressure for me was like, it's just like you accepted it. That was my norm. What I found out though, this is what I've worked with for years, is that's not everyone's norm.
No, man.
So what comes natural to me, although I say natural, I've learned how to lead people, how to connect to people, how to get the best out of people, is because I was thrust into those situations. Not everyone has had that experience. So when I hear that imposter syndrome starting to creep in. Like, why would anybody want to listen to me at a workshop? Why would a company hire me to do this?
Yeah.
I'm like, this stuff is so simple. Why would they hire me? Then I got to take a step back and say, well, here's why. Here's the experience I bring and that. So
Yeah. I would love to get into the start of it too. So please, at some point, I would love to get back into that. But what was it like when was this the last mission you were on in Iraq?
No, the last mission I was on was, that was interesting. We had the unit that was taking over our responsibility. And the last mission I was on, we had to do what's called like a route familiarization with them. So half of my team, half of their team, we left our base and we wanted to familiarize them with, here's the routes that you're going to take, here's the roads you're going to take, here's some of the tricky spots, here's where we've seen, activity or enemy activity, here's where on the map this is here, but in reality it's not anymore, because you don't have just like road signs that are pointing you everywhere. So we did a route reconnaissance with them, and on the way back we had we came upon an accident, and we had there was a gravel truck, big dump truck full of gravel, and the gravel was spilling out of the back.
A U.S. gravel truck?
U.S. convoy. And then so the gravel was spilling out of the back. The Humvee behind it slid on the gravel, hit the truck, spun. The Humvee behind that T-boned.
Eesh.
Yeah, so we came up on that wreck. This was about a half mile from our operating base. So we were almost done. Like, we were almost...
Yeah.
Like,
was this a completely different
done,
unit,
done.
or was this
It
the other
was.
half of...
Nope,
Oh, okay.
completely different unit on that supply route, doing a gravel run or whatever they were doing to improve their base. So we came upon it, and this is how proud I am of my team. My team immediately, hey, LT, we got to stop. Here's this. I'm 5 vehicles back. I didn't realize what happened at the time. They formed our perimeter like we do. They got out. They saw there was like 2 soldiers that were in the road in pain. They got banged up from the wreck. They start administering first aid and assessing them. I found the person in charge of the convoy, told him who I was. I said, hey, your lucky day. We're a recovery unit. We're going to get you. The gravel truck was on its side.
Wow.
Right? So we had to pick the gravel truck up was the big thing.
How do you do that?
Crane?
With our crane.
Good
Yeah.
point.
So
Good catch.
we had our crane actually, so for this one we had a Hemet wrecker. So we were able just to pay out the winch, strap it up, and then pull it back up, and then load it. We had a flatbed, so you just pulled it on that flatbed. But what we found though was, unfortunately, again, everyone in this story made it out okay. The soldier that was in the Humvee, they got T-boned on the front passenger side. We found out that his leg was stuck.
Ooh.
And full on compound fracture. So the way a Up Armor Humvee works is the doors have a exterior overlap. So if you look at the door of your car, you have that gap.
Yeah.
Up Armor Humvees doesn't. That's for protection from ballistics or explosions.
Okay.
So you have that overlap for added protection. Well, when the Humvee crunched, the leg outside passenger door got half in, half out. So my team had an idea. We had been working on, all deployment. They created this hooking system to try to help rip these doors off. The idea was fast extraction. A lot of times when we come upon vehicles that are blown up or twisted, people are trapped inside. If the vehicle starts burning, you need to get them out and get them out quick.
Yeah.
So we had the winch on the wrecker. They attached the hooks to, pulled tension, and then just paid it out, and it would
Rip the door off.
Rip the door off.
Huh.
So like, LT, we're going to use the hooks. We're going to go. I said, yeah, let's go. Let's try it. And they get up there and like, can't do this. No matter which way we hooked the door, it was going to
Cut his leg
cut
off.
his leg. So this is how good my team was. My team was phenomenal. Again, example of being able to give them space to think, to own outcomes, and to come up taking risk on ideas. Right away, hey, we got another idea. We got a fire blanket and oxyacetylene torch, and the wrecker. We're going to cut the door off the hinges.
Wow.
We're going to put the fire blanket between his leg, so his leg doesn't get burnt from the heat of the torch. So they shoved that fire blanket in. I had the other officer over there. I said, hey, you got to call medevac like now, because you don't. He was bleeding pretty profusely, and you could see, it was clearly, and he was in pain.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, where do you need me? My team says, I need you on top with a tanker bar. Can you pry the door open? So here I am. I'm the team leader.
Mm-hmm.
It's not time for me to lead. It's time for me to follow. The people that knew what they were doing with the torch and the blanket, they were the ones that were leading.
Yeah.
They were influencing my decision. They were influencing the situation. I look around. I got a team over here that's pulling the gravel truck up. I got a team over here. Part of my team is doing first aid. I got the rest of my team here helping this soldier out. Like how, and nobody's waiting for me for direction.
Yeah.
Nobody's waiting to be told what to do because we created the space for people to own that, to share in leadership responsibilities.
Yeah.
So they cut the door off the hinges. It comes off. Medevac lands. Get the guy on the litter. Carry him off to the helicopter. He goes right to the operating base. Come to find out, saved his leg.
Wow.
So he came away A-okay.
Nice.
Got everything recovered. But to me, I'm like, that was, that's a memory that's burned in my mind of not just the pride in what my team was able to accomplish, but to me, it's a reminder of what you're able to accomplish when you give your team the space, the autonomy, the freedom, and you take that responsibility for outcomes away. They'll come up with, you can take the responsibility for the outcome away, they'll still own the outcome because they want to own it.
Yeah.
They want to be a part of that. When you take the negative away of if something goes bad, they'll want to make sure something goes good.
Going back to our point of like the escape room, I guess you could say, is that's high stakes problem solving with a very short time window to operate.
Yeah.
That's insane. Thinking of that on the fly too, to grab, what did you say it was that they used to burn the door?
Torch,
So
right?
a torch. So we had welders, and we would get into these situations where, hey, if I can't hook up or something's too big, we would just cut it into slices. So they use that torch. And I'm not a welder. If a welder is listening out there, I'm going to butcher it. But it's an oxygen and acetylene. So you have those two things that come together that welders use for torch, but it cuts through metal.
Yeah.
So they just decided to, instead of pry the door, I'm just going to cut it off the hinges and have something underneath of it. Underneath of it to carry the weight. Yeah. Like that's brilliant.
And
protect his leg on the fly. Yeah.
And how do we normally talk about that? It's like when you're dealing with, when you have to solve problems under any amount of stress or anxiety or whatever it might be, you are way more subjective to like messing something up pretty bad. But being able to think that effectively on the fly and to do something and execute that well, that quickly in a very high stakes situation, like that's crazy.
That's a skill, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
So looking back on it and researching more, what I attribute that to is everything that happened to the left of that situation. So I gave my team time to develop this hooking system. So they got repetitions of finding creative solutions and being okay if something failed. Right? So all of those other little missions, all those other little training scenarios, all those other things leading up to that moment matter. People aren't just going to feel comfortable coming up with that decision on the fly in the moment unless you create the conditions for it to happen beforehand when things are safe. Because at that point in time, in my mind, it just became muscle memory.
Yeah.
Because they already felt comfortable taking risks. They already felt comfortable using their voice because we did it in other contexts leading up to it. So if you want your team to perform when the pressure's on, you've got to give them the space to perform and practice when the pressure's off and recognize them and kind of coach them through that. Because you're not just going to, again, football player, basketball player, you're not, hey, all right, you're going to go pinch hit for Derek Jeter now. It's the bottom of the ninth, bases are loaded. You're going to, we're going to put you in a foul line and expect you to make this shot. Like, you better have shot free throws or take some cuts at the plate prior to that. So that's what I talk about when I talk about with teams of when you get into those crisis moments, think about what you've done leading up to it, and then how you come back from it on the right. That's when your team will perform best under pressure.
Yeah, and you got the quotes. What is the quote where it ends in falling to the level of your preparation? How does that begin?
You put me on the spot, bro.
Come on,
I didn't practice enough. It's just funny. It's so ironic.
That's a good, that was a perfect way, a perfect, what can you say? Just a perfect little cliff note to encapsulate everything he was just saying about that, though. It's like you don't rise to the level of your
expectations. You fall to the level of your training.
Yeah, or your preparation.
Your preparation. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that.
And that was your farewell mission too. That was your last mission.
It was.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think what I was getting to with that question is initially, because this was a while ago, What is
I'm
it
sorry, I
like?
rambled.
No,
My bad.
that's a very interesting story, man. What's it like readjusting back to regular Will life when you come back to America and you're back here and you're done? Everything's said and done.
Yeah.
What's that like? How do you readjust?
I'm still adjusting, to be completely honest with you. You
And
know,
how long have you been?
20 years ago, you said, right? Was
20
your
years
last
ago,
mission?
20 years ago, I was deployed. That last mission there, and heck, that had been November because we were home in December. I mean, so that's almost like
Nice.
20 years to the day, a couple weeks now. Anyhow, adjustment is tough, and I think the military's gotten better with that, with the resources and some of a lot of the nonprofit organizations that are out there.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate enough. My dad served in Vietnam. And he did his very best to prepare me, and he would, he told me, hey, in Vietnam War, we'd come home and we'd still have dirt underneath our fingernails from Vietnam, and here we are in San Francisco. Like, there was no reintegration there.
What did your dad do in the military?
So he was a heavy equipment operator. He worked in an engineering battalion. They did pipelines, water lines, pipelines in. He was stationed in Thailand, and they'd run through a couple different countries over there. So that's what his he did. And then he and I actually served in the same military police unit, but at different times.
Oh,
so
wow.
he served in the National Guard in the early to mid 80s in a military police company, and that was the first unit that I actually joined. And I still had soldiers that were in that unit that knew, Ramey, are you Bruce Ramey's son?
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, I am. So he prepped me for that. But military's getting better at transitioning people out. But it took me 18 years to go to the VA to file my disability, paperwork, and that's usually something you file like as you're processing out. But the big thing for me was getting diagnosed with PTSD. So here I am. I've been it was about 2 years ago is when I went through the process of going through this disability process, and they send you through everything physical, and then they have you talk with psychiatrist, psychologist, person to assess you. And what I got diagnosed with was really, I say from what I'm learning about PTSD, there's a spectrum, and I'm very, very fortunate to where it's not something that is totally debilitating or I don't have a lot of nightmares or things that you would see in Hollywood. What I do deal with though is hypervigilance, a little bit of hyperarousal. So for example, the guys asked me, well, what did you do in Iraq? I said, we ran maintenance recovery, convoys, we're on the road a lot. Yeah. What I found was, the things that they trained me to do, I still have those first thoughts that go in my head. So when I see like a disabled vehicle on the side of the road, my first thought and action is to look for, is it wired up? Is it an explosive device? Yeah. And it's a quick thought, and then context comes back, but it's still there. Yeah. Because I needed that instinct, I needed that skill set to survive. Same thing when I look at, when I go into public places, especially packed public places, I'm always looking for a threat or here's my alternate, my primary, and
that's interesting.
So because you needed to be aware of your surroundings. So imagine going down the road at 55 miles an hour and there's a Pepsi can on the side of the road. And inside that Pepsi can is shoved with C4 explosive. That's what they were using.
Wow.
They got a little bit better on the side of the road. So you have automatic garage doors. Familiar?
Yeah.
Automatic garage doors?
Yeah.
So the sensors?
Yep.
And if and those sensors in here are meant, when you trip them, they're meant to stop the door from coming down.
Yep.
They would wire those up to explosives.
The same technology?
Same technology. They'd wire those up, and then when a vehicle passed, it would trip an explosive. So you're trained to look for those small, little, minute things. A pile of garbage. Now, think about 380 or 611, whatever you're driving. How many piles of garbage do you see on the side of a road?
Oh, man, dude, it's all over.
Time,
right?
Yeah.
So when it becomes instinctual for survival, there's not a lot that you can do without a huge concerted effort to take that out of your wiring. So it was those type things that I've carried. So we talk about transition. So it's those type things that I was carrying. And then for the first, I'll say, good 10 years after getting out of uniform was the identity.
Yeah.
Who am I? I'm Captain Ramey. I'm U.S. Army. That's who I am. No, that's what you do. And you're not doing that anymore. Well, if I'm not doing that anymore, And that's where my identity was tied. Who am I? And I mean, that's an existential question that a lot of us can ask ourselves.
Yeah.
But what I find with myself and others that are transitioning out of the military is you've got to be able to now detach of who you are from what you do, so that you can be authentic. You can have preferences. You can have priorities of how you want to live your life or how you want your work life to be. And that takes a very explicit practice to get into, to understand. Well, here's who I am. So from 17 to 29, I was in the military. Think about how formative those years are.
Mm-hmm.
From 17 to 29.
Boy to man.
Right.
At least that's what it seems like.
Absolutely it was. Quickly. Accelerated at
Yeah.
that. Right?
Yeah.
Especially in this time frame.
Oh yeah.
Very high stake.
So now you're 29 and you're not in the military anymore. And what do?
You're still young enough that you need a plan.
Yeah.
You can't just retire and sail off into the sunset.
So I meandered, and I had a wake up call with my wife, and my wife's phenomenal. She's
Watch that.
best,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Best person, best friend could have. So we moved around a lot because I couldn't find a job that I loved, that I really loved, and that was part of me wanting more and chasing that performance accolade. And so I remember her talking to me. She said, "Hey, we're here now. This is the move to Northeast PA."
Yeah.
She says, "We're here. We've been here for 2 years now. We've got kids. They're in school." She goes, "You're talking about moving again, and you're talking about not being happy." She goes, "I'm starting to think it's me." And that was a big eye-opening, event for me. Was it's not you. I'm not happy with who I am because I don't know who I am. I'm not happy at work because I don't know what my purpose is anymore. So I had to go on this. I chose to. I said I have to because to me it was, no, you're my everything. My wife, my kids, my family, they're my everything. I'm like, no, it is not you. Oh, if it's not you, then it's got to be me. So then I started going on this journey towards how do I understand what my purpose is? How do I understand what I'm here to do, who I'm here to serve, whether it be in uniform or not? What's my why?
That's a spiritual journey.
And you've got to be open to embracing it because some people think it's just fluff. But I tell you, in doing that and practicing mindfulness and practicing, meditative breathing and practicing trying to be still. I'm in a constant state of busy. Practicing, being able to be focused on things. Once I understood that and tried to, found some answers to those questions, I say, hey, my purpose here is to help people be at their best. My purpose is to help teams work at their best. That's who I want to serve. Let me start my own business. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I knew who I wanted to serve. I knew why I wanted to do it. So I took the leap to start doing that. And I tell you, the fulfillment and the content feeling of working and living in your purpose is phenomenal. I'll go home drained from a day job and just feel worn out and empty. And I'll go home drained from leading a 3 or a 6 hour workshop with a team and feel phenomenal. I'm still just wanting to hit my recliner and just flop. But that feeling is phenomenal because I'm getting to pour into people. I'm getting to share experience and help people have their aha moments. To me, that was when I understood more of, I've transitioned from this time in uniform to here. And the skills and the experiences have helped me be tremendously successful throughout my transition time. But it was successful by the measure of career ladder, career promotion, next job, increased responsibility, increased title, increased pay. I'm like, I'm chasing all the wrong things.
Yeah.
I need to figure out how to provide a great living for my family, but chase who I want to be and how I want to live and who I want to serve.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Do you think the carryover from the principles that you have adopted in your time in the military that you then took over into starting your own business, do you think that aided in helping you be more comfortable with just living regular civilian life?
Oh, 1,000%, right? So, the taking risk and the being creative and the self accountability and the self discipline and the self ownership, all of that has helped me be successful, especially when starting my own business or working with in entrepreneurship. There's a nonprofit I know. It's called Owners in Honor, and what people have found is sometimes people have a tough time transitioning from the military. I think there's something like a statistic is something around 60% quit their job within their first year.
Wow.
And 40% quit within the first 2. You know,
Military veterans.
yeah, because of the transition out. Because I've lost a sense of purpose. I've lost a sense of camaraderie. I've lost a sense. So that's why, you know, these nonprofits are trying to work very, very hard to place you in a job that is aligned with your priorities and preferences for how you want to live.
Yeah.
Owners in Honor is a nonprofit that just got started to help. If you're a small business owner and you have no one to you know, give your company to, so to speak, they want to pair you with a veteran who's interested in entrepreneurship in that industry.
That is cool.
Right? So it's like, hey, if I'm my family's not interested in my business, but I built something great here, and they, you know, and there's a veteran that says, hey, I'd love to have my own business. They pair them up to learn about that business, what it means to be a business owner, and then potentially the idea then is that, hey, if you found a good match, you transition that over, so you can go retire, and knowing that your business is carrying on, and you're giving a veteran an opportunity to have ownership in something that they want to create and build on their own, because they bring, you know, we bring a set of skills of problem solving and creativity and perseverance that just serve, you know, business ownership so well.
So, I mean, I can relate a lot to what you were talking about when it comes to trying to discover your identity. And I'm sure it's because I'm young and I'm trying to figure things out. I know, you know, we can all relate. But, you know, being that Kevin and I are building this platform and a lot of kids at our age listen to this kind of stuff, what would be your advice to somebody that's in their 20s who are trying to, say, discover their purpose and try to better understand their identity?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question. I really do like that. It's something I've learned recently is really understand who you want to serve. So whether that be in your own business, whether that be in you know, working for an organization, who is it in, like the capital W, we? Who is it that you want to help? Who's the we that you're trying to better? Who do you want to impact? And then ask yourself, why is that important to me? So when you understand who you want to serve or who you're in service of, and you understand and can answer, why is that important to me? Now you're on the road to figuring out where can I get this? Where can I chase, you know, not necessarily chase, but where can I find this combination? And then you've got to dig in a little bit deeper into the difference between happiness and contentment. Happiness is an emotion that comes and goes, right? You can be happy for a moment at a game. You can be happy for a moment on Christmas morning. Now think about how happy you are opening a birthday present. Oh, this is awesome. I got the next Xbox, whatever. This feels phenomenal.
Yeah.
And then a month later, when that thing's collecting dust, you know, you still have that happiness? Now, contentment is your ability to be fulfilled with the work and the life that you're doing in the moment. So understanding that difference and not chasing happiness, but pursuing being content in the work that you're doing in service of others will help you along the way. Our oldest daughter, Ramey, love her to death, 20 years old. She's a junior at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University down in Daytona. She's studying astronomy and astrophysics.
Wow.
Oh, cool.
We just had an astrophysicist.
Yeah,
You
we
did,
talked about
yeah,
it on the
yeah.
DMs, I'm pretty sure.
It did, yeah. I was like, oh, this is awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, my daughter's into it. She has found this, I want to help discover something new. So it's something bigger than yourself. And that's hard. I have a hard concept with thinking about something bigger than myself, right? Even having served in the military and all this. So it's hard to grasp, but if you can take time to explicitly think about who is it that you want to serve. Allie has found her way in. This isn't easy. This isn't quick money. It's probably not a heck of a lot of money, right? You're going to be a professional academic, right?
Yeah.
You've got years ahead of you of hard road to learn your craft and to get into this field. But when you find that, the pursuit is worth it. The challenge is worth it. So if you're in your 20s right now, you can find your purpose, and then you can align it to the work that you want to do by answering some of those questions. You'll be on your path.
I love that, man. That's so inspiring. I just heard a talk. I don't know. I was listening to a podcast, and it was Jordan Peterson. He was talking about, a lot of people say or encourage you to, strive for happiness. How do I find happiness? And he thinks that happiness is fleeting and it's subjective. Like, you could feel happiness for a moment, but you're not going to always be happy. That's just not the reality of the human experience. But purpose is much more meaningful, because even if you're uncomfortable, even if your emotions aren't, even if you're not experiencing positive emotions, you could still be driven by a deeper purpose. And purpose is what he encouraged we should ultimately aim for. And I thought that that was really cool to hear, because I'm still on my phase of trying to discover my purpose, to tell you the truth. But that does sound like it's a really cool feeling, to have a purpose and know what it is that you're supposed to be doing every single day, and like where you're gearing your mind to every single day. I think I'm loosely figuring things out. Like, I kind of know a direction, and I know some things that I'm supposed to be doing for sure, but I don't know if I have my purpose quite yet.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting thing to think about.
It's probably ever evolving, I would imagine. Like, even when you do think in the moment, you understand what your purpose is. I'm sure it's subject to change.
Have you ever heard of a guy named Johnny Kim?
I think, he's like Navy guy, Harvard guy.
Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
Harvard MD.
Physicist or a physician. Yeah.
NASA astronaut.
Yeah.
And that dude, man, like, you got to think about, like,
Life resume.
him waking up every single morning, and his life resume, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, he's serving for sure. He's living a life it's not about him. I mean, some of it might be like, you wake up, you're a badass every single day. But
He can
not,
look himself in the mirror every morning, but
that's super cool to me, man.
It's the pursuit, right? And that's part of it too, is, purpose is maybe not a destination, but it's a pursuit. Right? And it's that you're on that horizon line, right? It's always out there, and you're gonna, like you said, hey, it may evolve, it may waver a little bit, but part of it is enjoying that pursuit, not necessarily the destination when you get there, because there's always going to be somebody to serve.
Yeah.
So I love having conversations like this. I love, it hit me a couple weeks ago of, for me, leadership is something that I can say with some pride right now, I'm knowledgeable about. I continue to research. I continue to learn it. I'm an expert in one little area, but there's so much more to learn.
yeah.
And I've lived it. But what I remember is, hey, there's people who haven't yet, who this is still a new topic for. Man, so how great is that I get to help them learn and understand and apply it, so that when they have contact with their teams, or they have contact with people in their life, they can have a positive effect. So then what that spun me to was, well, geez, if I can take my experiences and my knowledge accumulation and share it with Kevin, Darian, and Brian, and if you take one thing, one small, minute thing from this conversation, and you share that with somebody, I've had a multiplying effect.
Yeah.
I'm like, boom.
Well,
That's what I want to be able to do, is have a multiplying effect of positivity with people.
have you ever thought about writing a book?
Yes.
You do it?
I would love to. So actually, Lauren and I are co-authoring a manuscript on shared leadership.
Oh, that's cool,
And
man.
we're fingers crossed. We're working with a university press in the process of trying to get them to actually pick it up,
Oh, man.
so that we can work through publication. If they don't, then we've got to come back to the drawing board. Lauren is a model of resilience and perseverance. She's like, if this doesn't work out, we're going to try this. If
That's
that doesn't
cool.
work out, we're going to try that. So the premise of the manuscript is really these concepts of shared leadership, and it's brought to life through the stories of colleagues and friends of ours that we've had who've worked across a myriad of industries. But that's one. My wife told me, you should write a book about something.
There's a proverb that I always say on podcasts, and it's a Jewish proverb, and it goes, every man should do these three things in their life before they die. And it's write a book, have a son, and plant a tree.
Oh, man.
Because all of those things will be here far after he's gone.
Okay.
So
I'll start. Have a son.
Yeah,
right?
you did that?
Yeah, good there. Yeah, Aiden, our son's 17-year-old. He's a senior in high school. And
Okay.
He's going to be on to great things. And we have our youngest daughter, Ella's 13. So
you got to plant a tree and
I
write
got
a
to
book
plant a
now.
tree and write a book now.
Yeah.
Well, going back to the shared leadership thing, I wanted to share a story of an experience that I had with shared leadership, and it's in the school setting. So I went to, I did a PG year at Wyoming Seminary. And you talk about like leadership positioning. And so, by the positioning of the leader, you kind of can clearly understand the roles between the two parties, say the person in charge and the person or who are the subordinates. So like if a teacher's at the head of a classroom and then there's a row of desks, it's clearly understood who is the person in charge, right? And how you should go about handling that. But I was in a classroom setting once upon a time where the teacher had a round table like this.
Yeah.
And all the students, including himself, he sat at the helm of the table at the top, and then all the students sat around. And this was a politics class, which, by the way, I knew nothing of politics at the time. I still know nothing about politics. I think I know a little bit more because of this class, though. But the structure of this class was he would introduce a topic and then teach about it. And then he would just let us riff and then talk to each other and debate and work things out to better understand what it is that he just taught. And it was so effective because everybody kind of chimed in and shared little pieces that they might have known about a piece of history or the lesson that, or something that they've taken from the lesson. So it was cool. And then he drew the table like this. And every time somebody would talk, he would draw a line from one person to the next. And then how this person talked to this person and how they contributed here. And at the end, it was this huge, like, messy looking graph of all the people collaborating and working together to kind of share information and work through understanding, you know, the subject matter of the class. It was
I love that.
It was crazy. And then if we came to a plateau, he would throw something back in. He would kind of throw 2 cents in and let us untangle that how we saw fit. But it was really cool.
That's a teaching mastermind. That's actually really interesting.
He was brilliant. This guy, to this day, he taught me things that I'd never forget. Like he taught me what mutual funds were.
Wow.
Yeah. And we worked on that in the class. Like he had a round table like that, and that's how we figured things out. I learned about the prohibition from him. I learned how the highway systems worked. All in that class.
I'm about to have a very experimental day at work tomorrow. I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna be in there trying to,
Well, you work with elementary students, bro. That's gonna be a completely different
I never brought
story.
that up to you either. But yeah, so like what he was saying before about his time spent working in emotional support classes in a school district locally, I do the same thing, but not with emotional support students. I do learning support students. So I have a class of kids that in some way are intellectually declined and they need additional help than regular education students. And with that comes a lot of additional problems that you wouldn't see in your typical regular education classroom. So I think a lot of these principles that we're talking about in this podcast and just some of the general talking points in general, I guess you could say, are things that I think could really effectively be applied to like schooling.
Yeah.
100%.
Could really help.
Speaking of schooling, what is your involvement in academia now?
So I do adjunct professor work with Drexel University. I literally just this last weekend, their new executive MBA program and the new cohort executive DBA program. I go down and do open residency. I've done executive ed work with Drexel in the past there. So I get to go down when they have their one-day elective and, teach a course. And really, I do very similar premise to the workshops I lead for my clients is experiential learning. So we're going to break open a topic of leadership. I've taught collective. I actually taught collective purpose, which is the conversation that we were just having about is how does a company or how does a team build a collective purpose that the team can identify with and hang on to that'll help them continue to work together through tough times or adversity. It gives them something bigger than themselves. So I do a couple times a year. I'll work with Drexel, and it's just a phenomenal experience being able to give back. And the DBA program, who I'm an alum from, I helped set them off on their first residency with some visions of what it takes to be successful in this program, trials and tribulations, share my story, and help them start to understand what type of research they want to do, who do they want to reach through their research, why is that important to them, and then walk them through, here's what's your vision of success, and then break them down into these discussion interaction groups. Now, you're not in it alone. You've got a small pod of people here. How are you going to interact? How are you going to support each other? So I do that, and then I still work with Lauren and Mike Kuchenberger from the University of New Hampshire on. We've been trying to write some papers and submit to some journals. Sometimes you get accepted. Sometimes you don't for publications. But so that's what I'm doing with academia these days.
Awesome, man. I think this was a dope podcast. I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed working some things out and better understanding the topic of leadership. This was really, really cool.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Likewise, no, I agree.
Awesome. So Space Crew.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
please.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
got it.
You guys got time?
Yeah.
You got time
Oh,
for
yeah.
that?
As long as you do, yeah.
Yeah, so what you got questions or what do you want to
So
know? What do you want to know?
you got an award. You were awarded a space,
The Army Space Badge.
the Army Space Badge. And so, what is that award, and why were you awarded that?
Yeah, so my last job in uniform, I was a space operations officer in the U.S. Army. And so we did satellite communication links, satellite communication equipment. So this was before Space Force was a thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The U.S. Air Force had, most of the proprietary, education on space. Well, the Army it's always had a unit that did satellite communications. You think about ground units and communication, and satellite links, and all that. So anyhow, I had to go through a 16-week program where we had classroom learning, and then we had site visits of just about any government or commercial entity that worked with space. And at the end of that course, plus 2 years of experience in a functional area 40 program position, which I was in, then I was qualified to wear, I say, the highly coveted, within the space operations community, the highly coveted Army Space Badge, which looks very similar to, the center of it looks like the old Star Trek badge, and the wings look like something Buzz Lightyear would wear. But here's my cool story for my time in my space crew. We got to tour SpaceX in California.
Really?
I kid you not.
Wow. Did you meet Elon?
I saw his cube.
Oh, really?
So this is 2008 time frame. So remember, take yourselves back to 2008. Marvel was a big thing.
Marvel.
This is crazy.
Yeah. We'll get to you in a second. We
Marvel
got
was a
something
big
for you.
thing, right? So the myth is, I don't know if it's true or not, but the myth is that Robert Downey Jr.'s character, Iron Man, the personality
Based off of
loosely
Elon
based
Musk.
on Elon. So we walk into SpaceX, and they are making satellites to launch. And right front and center in his facility was the Iron Man statue.
Wow.
From the movie, signed by Chris Evans, Samuel L. Jackson, and everybody wanted to pose because Scarlett Johansson signed that as well. So all these guys wanted to pose with Scarlett Johansson's signature.
Oh my God.
We got our arms around Iron Man. Everyone's posed up with Iron Man there. I mean, it was like, a piece of like geek culture that we were just, because it was hot at the time. That was there.
Is that actually a theory, or not even that it's a theory, but for lack of a better term, is that actually a theory that Iron Man or Tony Stark is loosely based on Elon Musk?
The way his persona was portrayed in that
That's
movie.
funny. My reason for asking that question is I always assumed that. I had no idea that was a real thing.
Yeah, so the Iron Man character was, created way before Elon was even a twinkle in his parents' eyes. But that's what so like I said, I don't know if it's a myth or if it's true or if that's what they did, but you can see those.
I'm sure there's some of it in there.
That's what I always say about Elon Musk is he's like the real life Tony Stark. That's what I always say about him.
Yeah.
That's insane.
But the cool part was, so they're walking us through, and the way they had it set up is nobody had offices there. So they literally had, the guy pointed to a cube. He goes, hey, the cube in the corner, that's Elon's cube. It had his name there. And his cube was in the same cube farm as everybody else.
That's cool.
And he had a problem getting a part from a supplier. So we bought, now this is El Segundo, California, right? Like this is, high priced commercial real estate. So he bought the industrial area next door and set up his own fabrication shop because it was cheaper for him to do that and have this part here on time than it was.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's operations management 101. Like, hey, figure it way out. So so I spent time doing that. That was a fun crew to work with. We did a lot of cool stuff. And that was my last time getting to lead a team as a direct leader, team leader up there. And I had a little more experience, and the team I had was brand spanking new out of the schoolhouse. They were young soldiers, so you don't get a lot of second opportunity to lead at that small unit level, once you're a captain. So it was a fun time.
Yeah, and what do you make of all the stuff that they're doing now, like fast forward to 2024 with all these what are they, Falcon rockets?
Reusable rockets. Yeah.
And like the push to make it hopefully to Mars or something like that.
So
one day.
we toured a launch facility in California as part of that course too. So I got to see a Saturn V. I mean, it's a massive rocket. And then they showed us video of what it looks like after.
Wow.
It light $1 billion up and burn it, and then do that again the next time you want to launch something. Hopefully that launch went right. So I think the investment in being able to reuse and repurpose that, it's there. I think the advancements that we're going to make towards, space exploration or, continue to clean up that geosynchronous orbit where all these satellites are being parked. Like, we've got to figure out a way to make that more cost effective, just like anything else. Make it more cost effective, make it more accessible so that we can figure out how to, leverage it for the good, for humanity, or for whatever it may be. But, yeah, it's interesting having those. I love watching those launches and then seeing like that thing came right back down, right
it's
back on the
nuts.
spot. It's crazy.
Yeah.
That's how it is in the TV shows. When they use a rocket in a TV show, they get to use it again. It doesn't just it's not just not reusable.
One and done.
Yeah.
I heard something about this recently in relation to like the moon landing conspiracy, Brian. And I don't know if you could look this up, but it had something to do with I believe we have some type of I don't think atomic's the right word, but there's some type of nuclear belt, I guess I want to say it's called, outside in outer space that we, in theory, the only time we've ever done it successfully is on the Apollo missions when we were able to land rockets on the moon. But apparently we've never done anything like this since then. Obviously, we've never been back to the moon, but you would need to do this theoretically to make it to Mars. And again, you could look up like just the nuclear belt or like see if you can find any information on that. But that it's like something that's heavily tied to like the moon landing conspiracy, being that theoretically there's no way, at least to our minds, that we're able to achieve that. But at one point in time, if we landed on the moon, it had to have been done.
But we've been back to the moon though before, right?
I mean, we've sent things to the moon, but not with people in them.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Humans have never been back to the moon since.
I think there was like 2 or 3 successful Apollo missions, and that was all. That was it.
Really?
And we haven't been back since.
Then Kennedy was last president before, I want to say, Barack Obama, that really funded
Space
NASA,
exploration.
Space
Yeah.
exploration.
And that
Isn't
was
that crazy?
Well, we got into, and again, historians and politicians, forgive my inaccuracy if this is wrong, but we got into the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
So space exploration was,
Kind of put out a halt.
early 60s to late 60s, and then in the late 60s to mid 70s, we got into the Vietnam War, and then your funding went to more towards defense.
Say what you want about Elon Musk, but isn't it crazy how he's doing all of this stuff independently?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not government. I mean, I know he's supported by the government in some senses, but like he's doing this independently, privately.
And then thinking on the outside of that too, I mean, he purchased Twitter, turned it into X.
Yeah, he's doing all this crazy stuff.
spearheading that whole thing.
I think Jeff Bezos has a space exploration company too.
Blue Origin.
Yeah, where he's trying to do the same kind of thing.
Yep.
Which is
Why don't
wild.
we hear much about that though? Because I'm familiar with that.
Richard Branson?
Yes.
Yeah.
Virgin Mobile.
Virgin Galactica.
Is that his?
He's doing commercial. Yeah, he wants to do. His was more just commercial launch for people. Like you want to go into space and orbit. Yeah, out of New Mexico.
Really?
Mhm.
Are people doing it?
Yeah.
Oh shit, bro!
Did you ever see a satellite model of what the Earth looks like with every satellite?
Yes, it's
You've
insane.
seen
Wait,
it?
what is
It
this?
is nuts.
Yeah,
so it's like
we went through the software where it shows. So you have all these different satellite constellations. You have low Earth orbit, which is typically where you have your sat phone stuff or your imagery. Then you have geosynchronous orbit, which is mostly where your like communications and other things are. And then if you get into some crazy stuff, we have things called high Earth orbit. So it's a high elliptical. But what you can do is all these constellations of satellites are known. So there's software that will kind of computer image it out, and you can see the collection of satellites that are around the Earth, and it looks like it
makes Earth look like a mechanical ball.
Yeah.
Like it's insane.
Really?
And if I can find it, I know I have it. I don't want to look for it on the pod because I don't want to ruin what we got going on. But if I can find it, I'll put it in the podcast here. It's a very interesting image, and I'll show you after the podcast if I can find it.
So if you were like if
really
you're
cool.
an outside entity looking in, you'd think you'd have a swarm of mosquitoes around this orb.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Shaquan was telling us like how many satellites are there?
I forget. It was some stupid number.
I'm gonna say thousands.
Was he saying? I think he might have been telling us about how many American satellites there are. Is
Yeah,
that right?
it might have been. I don't necessarily remember the number or exactly what you're referring. I do remember that conversation, but I don't remember what he said. It was very interesting though. When I saw that picture, dude, I was blown away. Because I mean, you always think like obviously there's satellites. You send a text message. Yada yada yada, how that goes. But you never really visualize like what that really looks like.
It's a problem.
It's insane.
Is it a problem? Well,
Well,
maybe
so-
for like, what? Yeah. Why is it a problem?
so it's a problem. Again, sorry, physicists
no
out there,
worries.
right?
We're on a
My
podcast.
daughter will correct me if I'm wrong when she
Yeah.
learns this, right? So you send a satellite out and it stays in orbit based on the science of I got to send it up with enough fuel and thrust to park it.
Mm-hmm.
And I want it parked in this orbit. So now we're going to play with gravity. Well, gravity decays over time. So I can only put so much fuel in this satellite to keep it in the position in orbit where I want. Earth is spinning, and I got a satellite that I need to keep spinning with it. Well, eventually the gravitational pull is gonna try to pull that back into the atmosphere. Well, if I don't put enough fuel in to park it, the Earth out of the Earth's gravitational pull,
Mm-hmm.
then we would have satellites just coming in, re-entering orbit,
Yep.
like constantly.
Crashing
And
into
we
us like
learned
meteors.
about that for the Shaquan pod, that there's a certain miles per hour that an object has to go to be able to escape Earth's gravitational pull. Do you remember going over that type of
Yeah,
information? And
kinda.
Yeah, there's a certain calculation for it.
So the problem though is, what do I imagine a parking lot full of cars? Imagine a parking lot full of satellites in space, of satellites that are no longer being used. So what do? I'm going to launch another satellite because I need to have that capability, and then that's going to go. And I'm going to launch
Yeah.
another satellite. And the U.S. is launching satellites, and Russia's launching
Wait, so they just die up there?
Yes. So what? So there is a international convening body that works with space law. Anybody wants to get into a career field that doesn't exist solely yet, get into space law.
Interesting.
So
Space lawyers? That'd be a good
right?
TV show. Dun dun.
So think about it. So like you're supposed to send this thing up here and park it, and it's out of its useful life. Well, I'm not sending somebody up to come get it or
Yeah.
retrieve it, and I don't want it coming back in, burn into my atmosphere or landing on somebody's house because it's not controlled anymore.
Yeah.
So now we're creating this big field of parked end of life satellites.
Space parking lot for satellites.
Now think about now this is like the Armageddon or the what was that movie Gravity with Sandra Bullock and
Oh, wait. This movie. Wait, what
George
was,
Clooney.
no. I'm thinking of a different movie.
Oh, you're thinking about the end of the world?
Yeah,
right? I
the
know
end
what
of the
you're
world,
referring
yeah.
to.
So,
That's a cool
so
movie.
gravity happens. They're on the international space. Now all of a sudden, now an asteroid comes, and now it hits the space station, and it explodes. And then there's nothing there to stop it. So then it sets off this chain reaction of just debris. So that's a problem in space. 'Cause
Yeah.
what do you do with all that? Like you've got these satellites that are parked up there and debris fields, and how do you clean that back up? How do you police that back up? How do you use it? How do you use that space?
In a weird paradoxical way, though, that kind of is what outer space is. It's just like a big cosmic trash can in a way.
Sure.
So
I mean, we don't know. Like there's so many
Yeah.
unanswered questions.
yeah, I mean,
That is interesting. That seems like there's a few business ideas in there. You could do space law. You could do space or satellite retrieval, like a satellite retrieval company.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can take a page out of Elon's book and do the returnable
The returnable
satellites. You know, you can
I
send
don't
them with enough fuel down there, put a timer on there, and when their fuel is out, or enough reserved fuel for them to come back and
I don't know if
refuel.
any just Joe Schmo's getting in that you probably need some startup capital.
Or you know what? I met a guy in Texas, and he was in the military, and he was in the Air Force.
Yeah.
And basically his job in the Air Force was he flew rather, a huge gas station. So he flew a plane that sent out this little antenna
Yep.
and it would fuel up.
refueling
Yeah.
mid-flight.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that existed.
It's
until this
wild.
conversation.
That's
I didn't even know that existed.
So you don't have to land in a country that you don't
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
not want to know what's going on. You can run longer missions. And, yeah.
Actually, I don't even think I was there for that conversation, and then you brought that up to me, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Bro, no way."
Could you imagine
And
doing
then
that
you
on the
showed
road
me.
though with cars? Like, hey, I'm just
Yeah.
gonna refuel. Like, I got a refueling car. We're gonna link up at 75 miles an hour going down the road and just refuel,
Yeah.
so I don't have to stop at a gas station.
Yeah.
That's going to be Elon. We're giving you an idea right now. He's going to have those. There's going to be drones that fly down. They see the cyber trucks.
Yeah.
They just plug up real quick.
Well,
Whenever
what
it
if you
gets
did that with
quicker.
satellites? There you go.
Yeah.
You know, like
I got to show you that picture, dude, because it's actually mind blowing.
yeah, I'd like to see it.
But no, going back to just one more thing that you brought up before, and we thought that this was crazy because we have one thing that we normally do with our preparation, like we'll write a bunch of stuff down and then we'll have ChatGPT like rift wild questions revolving around the parameters that we set to
Yeah.
kind of just come up whatever they think would fit best for more like for fun, whatever type of questions you want to call them. And one of them, we thought it was interesting because you brought up Marvel. And this entire time, we had a good question that ChatGPT gave us, but we were like, I don't want to just bring it up because if you're not a Marvel fan or you don't understand the reference, it wouldn't really make sense.
Well, you got hit me with it.
But in your facet of leadership, we wanted to know what you thought about. I'm sure you've seen Captain America: Civil War.
Oh, yeah.
The movie with Captain America and Iron Man. If I'm spoiling anything for you at this point, I'm sorry.
No, you're
It is
good.
what it is.
We are a Marvel family. Yep.
But I wanted to know what your thought was on who handled that leadership situation better.
Oh,
Was it
man.
Tony Stark or was it Captain America, Steve Rogers? Who do you think? And I had to explain this too to Darian the other day because I don't think he saw it.
Yeah, so I
But-
want to refresh, right? So they had the Sokovia Accords,
Yeah.
right? And then it was Tony Stark wanted to keep things intact for the good of the world.
Yeah.
And Steve Rogers wanted to kind of break off and
Yeah, they
know,
kind of
keep
took
things
reverse
at bay.
archetypes of one another. Like how I was explaining it to him is like how I would have envisioned it because I'm a huge Marvel fan. Like I've watched all the movies however many times. Theoretically, you would assume that Iron Man would have went the opposite way that Steve Rogers did, and vice versa. Steve Rogers would have went the way that Tony Stark did. But they both had personal biases that kind of led them to choosing their side.
yeah.
Tony Stark believed that he let people down by not being a good enough leader and getting a lot of people killed in various situations. And Steve Rogers had his best friend, the Winter Soldier, who he wanted to protect,
Yep.
the one that they were coming for.
Right.
So that's kind of what led to the clash of heads.
Yeah, so I think just taking those storylines, that to me that was a pivotal character shift for both, right?
Yeah.
Because from there, Tony Stark ended up, spoiler alert if
Yeah.
you haven't seen him yet, he ended up doing what
It
he was
is what
doing,
it
right?
is,
But
yeah.
they shifted. So in those situations, if you took a practical outside experience here, the ethical leadership questions come up,
Yeah.
right? Steve Rogers is probably more ethically accurate and correct in the stance that he took. Like, here's the law; these aren't meant to be broken. These rules are meant to be followed.
Yeah.
And then you've got Tony Stark talking about the feeling of leading a team. It's like, hey, we're here for people. You've got to have care and concern. We can't let people down. We can't let people die. It's for I'm sacrificing for the greater good.
Yeah.
And so here's these two, ethical or conundrums that come into play of, hey, people are people. You got to have compassion. Rules are rules. They got to be in place for a reason. When do you flex?
Yeah.
How rigid do you want to be, right? So I guess in my opinion, I'd probably err, even though I am a Captain America fan, I'd probably err towards the side of Tony Stark in that
Interesting.
situation, right? Because
Yeah.
rules are written in place for a reason, but rules are meant to be rewritten
Yeah.
if need be.
And it's interesting too because it's just great screenwriting, but both of those scenarios, I believe, positively played out for both of them. Like they both ended up achieving what they wanted to achieve and choosing the side that they did. So in theory, they were both correct for doing
Yeah.
what they did.
Yeah.
And then from that point on, they never really had another conversation about it. So it
No.
was like they never really had a chance to, which is interesting.
That is cool.
Yeah. That's screenwriting. We're gonna make a movie one day.
Love
Yeah.
it.
We're
We're
captivate
gonna
that.
And plant a tree.
we're gonna yeah. We're gonna draw up a psychological thriller one day. That's a
Yeah.
goal we just put down on paper.
You got to make that like that saying more modern, like the have a son, plant a tree, write a book. Like
Yeah.
it'd be like in today's day and age, it'd be like have a son, make a movie,
Write a movie.
host a podcast, right?
Yeah.
But,
Escape room. I can see it now.
Yeah, we should do it. Let's do it. Let's plan
do
it out.
Let's make it happen.
And
You can see the more logical side of our friend Brian over here. He didn't get to say too much today.
you went to a good one recently, right, Brian?
Yeah, I went to two different ones just recently.
Locally?
The one was in Old Forge.
Okay.
And that one was an Alice in Wonderland one. I'll be honest, bro, we got creamed out.
Really? An Alice in Wonderland one? Who'd you go with? Like, was there a group of people?
It was just me, Colin, and then my parents. 'Cause
Okay.
I don't know why my mother's just been on a escape room kick. And she's
Oh,
like,
nice.
hey, you want to come? I'm like,
Well, you get the logic from somewhere.
And then one was in Hazelton.
Okay.
Like 20 to 25-minute drive. That one we did pretty good.
Interesting.
We got out.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Let's do it. Let's make it
Set
happen.
it up, man. I'm down. 100%. I love this. This is a good episode. This is really cool.
Agreed.
And I think you have a really cool story. What you're doing is really, really interesting. And I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast will definitely walk away with something to think about or to work on within themselves. So,
Absolutely. I
hell
know I
yeah.
did.
So and I appreciate the opportunity, you guys. Just, all-stars, gracious hosts, man. It's
Thank
been
you.
a wonderful, phenomenal experience. I wish you the very best and, keep pursuing excellence.
Likewise.
Enjoy the
Thank
ride.
you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, and our paths will for sure cross again. You start writing that book, we'll you know, we'll be in touch.
Oh, yeah.
I'm joking. We'll be in touch outside of that for sure. But thank you guys for watching this episode of the Go Get Us podcast. If you did enjoy, Dr. Will, thank you for joining us again, man. You know, this was a really fun experience for me, and I hope the people at home watching, you took something from this. And if you didn't, go back and watch it again because you're crazy. Like, subscribe, share with a friend if you did enjoy. And yeah, it's been, actually, 1 second. Where can people find you? Where can people find your show? Where can people find your socials or everything about you?
Yep,
if they want to know.
LinkedIn, you can find me at Dr. William Ramey. Instagram, you can find Leadership Decoded Pod, my podcast. You can go to my website, drwilliamramey.com. And, Gmail. Good old-fashioned Gmail,
Nice.
wbramey03@gmail.com. You can find me there and, have a chat about leadership or team dynamics.
Great. And yeah, all that will be down in the description below. So yeah, go there and check that out. And again, it's been real, man. Thank you for joining us today. And we'll catch you guys in the next one. Let's go.
Let's go.
All right.
Thank you.
Peace, guys.
Peace.
Thank you.